People, you don't think I see you crying in your cars, but I do. Sometimes I can feel it at a red light, someone at my side trying to muddle through. See them wiping their eyes in their rear view, like black hole sun in the sky. Why the fuck won't you come when I need you? Well, this moment in time is as close as we'll be and as far as I'll meet you. Two windows in between us, new moon in the house of Venus. One stranger who sees you and reads your features knows that your alibi might be tight, but it's not quite leak-proof. So if you're sitting at the light and you're crying in your car, just know that I see you. And it's a 50-50 that I'm bloodshot, gun-shy, once bitten, twice tried, ribs pried wide to the sky till I'm see-through.
That's you, in case you don't recognize yourself.
You don't think I see you struggling to breathe, but I do. I see you stumble in your everyday grief like I do. I try, but I do. I'm twice bitten too. My mind's split in two. My knuckles bright white from the 10 to the 2. And the song in my head is the theme for a fugue, a state of decay through the filter of corporate news, where they edit the grays and the blues. They whitewash the brown till they drown out the natural hues. And then it's just another fact to refuse, that the corporate ladders for hanging the company noose. Consider it one of your perks, after all it's communal in use. So you can come and hang till your legs go limp and they're shaking you loose. Now you watch 5 co-workers opt for the alternate exit, neatly suspended above where you wolf down your food. And your company gets its incentives embellished by harping on wellness, suggesting you'd best take time for your mental health after your 14 hours are through. Like we gave you a bottle to piss in and fixed up a noose on the crossbeam. Christ, what more can we do? So if you struggle to breathe any moment that you aren't asleep, then remember, most of Americans fear for their savings, fear for their shelter, fear for their babies. You aren't the fringe of exception, but rather a perfect example of capital's rule. And you're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. You're far less alone than the ruling class tells you is true. I see you crying in your cars, but I do.
Our society and our world are full of these invented and built up and contrived facades. And sometimes some people come along with a hammer and smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
Welcome to the future. Shit where you please. The Wi-Fi's killer, but there's no more bees. So there's hardly any flowers, there are very few trees, and you'll pay $1,000 for some honey for your tea. But we got these awesome collars, mine's an Apple Model 3. It allows for better movement than the Tesla X Elite. It lets you customize the ads that it implants in every dream. And for premium subscribers, doesn't shock you in your sleep. But it doesn't stop there. It can analyze your speech, and if it hears disinformation, then it notifies police. It's a swift re-education, but it knocks you off your feet like your booster every 7th week. I faced the future boldly with 2 eager open eyes, and I picked a couple nuggets up that blew my fucking mind. Like you can taxidermy someone while they're technically alive, and they'll shine when it's election time. See, the Democratic voter base will pay them zero. Never mind if voting for the scarecrow is a vote along their party lines. They could stare into its marble eyes and claim there's something dignified. Unlike real politicians, this one doesn't need an oxygen or kit supply. But its function is the same as those who came before. The goals are never misaligned. It still spends all its working time performing pre-recorded fleecing sessions where it sugarcoats your slow and hungry genocide, while pouring billions into Nazi coffers, all the while selling you the story that we're moments till the MiGs arrive. So fuck it, ask Zelensky if he'll help replace our leaded pipes. Watch a fleet of Penske's show stacks of bills in every size. Guess it only took a black sun and a couple Hiles. Honorary goose step and some Nazi boots a quarter mile, all while Biden sneers his sordid smile. I don't know what was in this morning's vial, but it makes him stare 1,000 yards through all the prompters and the cards like he can smell the nearest child. His eyes are wide and wild, wider than the grave in which another 1,000 families were tossed in as I typed until they rose up to the sky unceremoniously piled. Which sort of flies right in the face of all this network ticker tape where the American economy has superhuman vitals.
And sometimes some people come along with a hammer.
See, I like to think my trial's gonna play like a recital. I'll denounce the world around me and accuse the most entitled, who weaponize their titles, whose pull is something tidal, who'd starve us all to death to best delight their blighted idol. So they might destroy the record, and I will never get to vinyl. So my word is not immortal, but it's final.
It's a brilliant, powerful hammer. It's a brilliant, powerful hammer to smash that facade.
When you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
Set you free, but I really want to let you be. And a part of me wished I could set myself aside, just let you take the ride, just chalk the rest up to destiny. I could let you believe that the only restraints in life are the size of your dreams. Let you believe each kid grows up with the world at their feet. When I know too well it's open season, I know they're taking stock and raising stocks and raising stock. And I'm simply not here to sit and watch as you learn the lesson all cogs are taught. Keep your head down and keep to task and just keep on blocking the rest of it all out. Just keep on with the rest of the herd of a million adjacent oblivious workers. The forest unseen for the trees, and the trees unseen for the fallout. No, what's more damning, baby, the truth or the ignorance? Fuck it, I honestly wonder if I see the answer so well. Baby, believe me well, I know it's scary, I scare myself. If I could find a way out of my head, I would run like hell. I would ditch this body politic, mindless occupant somewhere far from the dismal abyss. In the tranquil crystalline bliss of the beach, I could rest with the rest of the shells. And if anyone asks I'm anywhere else, if I'm really needed, just light the candle, then read the book and then ring the bell. Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth and then demand 1,000-fold. It's full of greedy pigs who'll eat you out of house and home. They'll strip your bank account and sweep you somewhere down the road, and then return to eat your tent and shitty bike you rode. Your bottled water, only shoes and coat and broken phone. Then smiling in your face, they'll tell you that the shelter's closed.
That is an extreme way of thinking.
Hoped you would never find out, knew that you had to know. Pulling what's left of my mind out, trying to tell you so. I tried to block the light out, knew you could feel its glow. I've been here holding my hands out, trying to keep you close, trying to keep you
Oh, my untarnished heart, my little perfect soul, this world will melt your mercy down so they can sell its gold. This world will take your worth, then demand 1,000-fold. I tried to block the light just so I could keep you close.
Maybe that's how it goes. We won't open our eyes, so we're the last ones to know. We're the last ones alive, kept our enemies close. Wondered why we don't thrive while we're grasping at ghosts, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5.
Count back from 5. The theater on fire, the cast on strike. The studio stock starts taking a dive. The contract's tossed and they're gone with the tide. The heads and execs, their hands are tied. We can't pump this dreck and treat you right. But what do you expect from the industry type who survive by the leeching of bodies and minds? From those who original thoughts never seem to find. So they're gonna reboot ALF before your wages rise. And it gives cause to pause and reflect on the times. If they're losing control of their fools and their mimes, when all those obedient actors who grew their careers by averting their eyes are now holding the line, along with the authors of countless scripts that strengthen the hand of that corporate grip, squeezing our throats till we take the pen and we accept and consent to the corporate drip, till you're all up to date on your pharma du jour, till you got a healthy support for the war on your lips. And now you know that the advertisers need more than a rerun summer full of flashback clips. Enter the scans from the year before, all the days of de-aging and mapping the face, and the hours of actors recording their voices are links in the chains that will bind them in place. Now all of those shows are so easy to make. When they got a drone they control that needs no break, it can bend, it can break, and it's cheaply replaced enough up-to-date films all in one take. And those studios bank on us doing our duty, unhinging our jaws and digesting the fakes, because they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you used saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own, something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Cause it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment.
Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards from 5, counting backwards.
Land of the free, and you'll know us by the trail of dead. It's just one more world war to complete the set. When you live by the pike, you die by the pith. You die wide-eyed, still pleading the fifth, or crying divine epithets and pathetic attempts at defense. All empathetic for those on your side of the fence. Well, I'll gladly put you and your legacy into an alternate tense of faltering senses and altered events. Like hun, it ain't a hearse, it's a reaper's stretch. Ah, how sweet, she said. Bunch of hordes in the street like it's Evil Dead, where the thin blue line meets razor's edge, and where the corporate ladder ascends to a steel-toed boot that awaits on the ledge. You'll be licking it fresh at your boss's request till it stomps each finger and watches you fall to your death and drown in an ocean of debt. Gone with the fodder who gathered to honor the patient left, who purity tested themselves into sections, step by step, till the next election, when it's just one them and the sound of their well-read theorized breath. That's harm reduction for the lowly cost of you holding your nose and just openly buying the theft. Maybe that's all in the flick of the pen. Maybe we're all one unmarked van from a trip to the pen, being guarded by pigs who exist on a diet of dying breaths of much worthier men. Honey, heaven's expecting you. Just don't get too hung up on who they let in. Just look up at the shine of the pearly gates. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the paint. You don't need to worry if there's lead in the water, lead in the milk, lead in the honey, lead in the caustic embrace of the Heavenly Father. Lead is the flavor of passive perpetual slaughter. Lead is the taste of us led to the ledge by the lure of the legend of expert consensus, and then beckon to stretch it just one step farther. And I hope all the folks who were boastfully gloating and toasting themselves as the heroes of COVID for boosting their boosters and doing their part are now equally thrilled to be starstruck martyrs. All laid in a government grave with anonymous markers, like you're back from the carvers and off to the splicer. You're the very first wave to be slain in the war against Pfizer, that 100 years war against Pfizer. They are thinning the crowd that is striking right now to bleed adequate pay from those inhuman misers, who all sit in their office and designate coffins to people regarded as nothing but profit for Kaiser. Still the Dems want you nicer. Dems want you softer. Dems want you kinder. Yeah, they all want you graciously starving in silence. You will speak when you're spoken to. Rest of the time, you and all of us peasants are merely depressing statistics neglected in Congress's binders. All bled, bone dry, then fed to the grinder. Our headstones line each step as reminders. That's a lesson in object permanence learned in the furnace by workers consigned to the fire. Workers bled, bone dry, then fed by the fed to the grinder. Fed by the fed to the grinder.
Have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Welcome if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
Yay, we did it.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Another week.
Another Wednesday. It's INN News, everybody. It's me, Reef, with my co-host as always, Collin Radix-Carter, aka Care Bear. Care Bear, how are you? You doing alright?
Besides the allergies, it's that time of year. And being tired, a little behind the scenes, normally I work out just before. We stream, at least now for the last 6 weeks. And I always try to get it done within an hour and a half, just so I have enough time to get home, eat, shower, get everything kind of set up here and ready to go. It always takes me around 2 hours, which I don't particularly like, but I have a personal trainer too. So he gives me so many sets to do, and they're heavy sets usually. So takes a while to do them, takes a while to gather myself and then do more sets. So I'm always, at least on Wednesdays, I end up kind of running home.
Yeah.
In order to,
get on here. cardio at the end of the day. You know, end of the workout for cardio.
Well, you know
Yeah,
what?
right?
It's funny because you talked about, oh, he has not done any hit workouts. He added them today.
Nice.
So
So some cardio. Go hit the skier,
a
get on the
little
bike.
assault
You know?
bike.
Sure.
So
What's nice with I'm sure your place has like a cardio bank. You know, they got ski erg, rowing machine, bike.
Yes.
You know, it's nice having that like hit workout where it's, you know, a minute on those things and then switching implements in the 30 seconds to get off. You know?
Right.
It's a little bit less boring than just being on the bike, you know?
Yeah.
I like hit workouts because I like going as hard as possible until not. You know?
Right.
I don't want to pace things. No pacing.
Shout out to Talon, my trainer, who added that. And so that was an extra 10 minutes. So yeah, so I basically got in literally 10 minutes before 9, and I had to take a quick shower and take literally like 2 bites of my dinner. So I probably can't eat until after we're done with this. So if I get mad for any other
You're
reason
hangry?
besides, yeah, that's hangry care.
We brought some stories.
We
We
did.
brought some stuff.
So you said this last night when we were prepping. Now we have a catalog, an extensive catalog of stuff that we're able to refer to ourselves now when we talk about when we do stories in segments. So we're going to refer to something I kind of briefly touched on 2 weeks ago regarding Namibia and Germany and how they're involved in a genocide in that country that nobody knows about. And it was only with the ICJ case regarding Gaza, you know, Germany is basically a puppet for us in the US. And pretty much we're like, we don't see no genocide. And Namibians called them out, and rightly so, given. Don't forget about our genocide that you guys implemented on us at the turn of the last century. So I mentioned that we would talk about it at some point. We have an article from Common Dreams that mentioned it this week. So I figured, why not mention that now in terms of and how it relates to what's happening in Gaza? I definitely have some thoughts regarding that.
Hold on,
And then,
there you go.
Okay.
Now you can.
And then later on tonight, probably our top story, not getting as much attention in our space as I think it probably should get. But this is very significant in terms of how, for all intents and purposes, this pretty much, in my opinion, without a doubt, kind of shows where, like, what's happening in Gaza is not plausibly a genocide, is actually a genocide. There have been mass graves. That's at least two, that have been discovered outside of Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis over the weekend. So the implications of that, I think you can guess what those implications are. Some resources in mainstream media has talked about this, but they not too much. So we'll kind of go into this a little bit more in depth in terms of what I was able to gather within the last couple of days. But yeah, we're going to talk about that as I think it is very important. And given the protests that are happening at colleges right now, this just kind of adds fuel to the fire in regards to that. So speaking of
college nonsense, you wondering why that might be happening? Well, we're going to talk about a secret task college force, or secret college task force, or college force secret task. I don't know how you want to read that. Don't dead open inside, but yeah, the Israelis have the secret spy force for colleges. So you're wondering why why those protests might be getting pushed back like they have been. We're going to go into it, and just about the protests in general. And then I brought what I said I'd bring last week. We're going to talk about Lavender AI and how terrible that is. So that's what I brought. So, you know, as always, if talking about these things gets us demonetized, so we have to go around that system, which is super fun. You know, you can just go to scan this QR code. Very easy. Or go to code-e.com/IndieNewsNetwork. If you would like to say super chat us during the stream or, you know, anything like that, it would be very appreciative. If you can do that, if you're in the live chat, you can put !donate, and it'll pull that link right up for you, like a good little bot boy, little nightbot, gonna help you out. You know, we already have some people who support us. Look at all these people. Look at them. Aren't they nice? Aren't they nice? You can always go to places like patreon.com/IndieNewsNetwork. Give us some monthly stuff. We want to keep the lights on over here. As you can see, I have lots of lights to keep running, so help, you know. But anyway, otherwise, you know, we go Substack, Rumble, which I'm going to go copy real quick. Yes, Gabriel, what do you have to say?
So, along with that, we are raising money for Jesse, our brother in the network. So right now, we're about $470 towards his computer. Can we try to get that full by the end of May? I think that could be easily done.
Yeah.
So that way he can have something hopefully by summer. But yeah, as we always say, always take care of yourselves, your family, and communities first in regards to financial giving. That being said, if you have any extra that you want to pass our way, we'd be more than grateful. And given these alternative ways to donate, pretty much depending on what you use, all of that money goes towards us. There are no cuts like YouTube does. I think Patreon takes a little bit, I believe, right?
But Ko-fi doesn't, I do believe. So that's always nice. But yeah, appreciate all the help we can get with that. It's tough out here, you know. But anyway, I'm ready for our first one.
I'm ready too. So our first story tonight, we're going to talk about Namibia for a bit. So 2 weeks ago, we did a story regarding Germany and Nicaragua, where Nicaragua was essentially, you know, putting Germany on blast regarding their role and their complicity in regards to what's happening in Gaza. And Owen Jones, who went viral 2 weeks ago regarding an interview that he did, basically called out Germany in terms of essentially saying that they're feeling guilt in terms of their role in the Holocaust, which is why they're being complicit with Israel now. But in light of that case with Nicaragua versus Germany, there has been some pushback from Namibians in Southwest Africa regarding the role of the genocide that Germans committed in their country at the turn of the last century. And I'm sure most of you do not know about that genocide. We talked about the Rwanda genocide a little extensively on this channel. As you know, I've visited Uganda. I have connections in Uganda. One of my mentors lives there. So we talked a little bit about that. We talked about that genocide a couple of weeks ago as well. But I'm sure many of you do not know about this genocide that happened in Namibia. So I want us to go back in time 2 weeks ago when we started talking about that on this show. And then we're going to go into it just to give you guys a little education regarding that genocide. So you can go ahead.
Yep, heading that way. Action.
Good point. So I tweeted today. So Germany can acknowledge the need for Jews to receive reparations for the Holocaust by at
You
least
can hear? How about that?
by providing weapons to
There we
nuke Palestinians, but crickets when it comes to atone for the crimes against Namibians. So I think you remember this. I think we talked about this very briefly at some point of how Germany basically stole land in Namibia, and there are German ancestors now who live there. Sound familiar? And took land from the indigenous Black people who live there, and now those Black people basically are like, we want to reclaim what's ours, and the white settlers are basically like, eat shit, right? So let's play this clip from African Stream to hear more about that.
They want the land back? How?
If ever you wondered what audacity looks like, I need you to kindly go back to the video, listen to the video, and see and hear what audacity looks like, because that is the definition of audacity. She cannot understand why it is that Namibians would want their land back. She can't understand why they would want it back, especially considering how it is that they got this land. Then when you go to the end of the video, the gentleman at the end is a bit confused as to why it is that they will call the killing of 70,000 people a genocide, and that we should just leave them in peace because they've found a way to coexist with the indigenous people of Namibia and not make it, exact words, it doesn't understand why it is that they want to stir the pot. Now my question is to Namibians, the indigenous people of Namibians and them only. Would you like us to stir the pot? It's a question. Because you are the only people that can guide us on this. The genocide that has happened in Namibia by the Germans has not been spoken about enough, and that is why they're so comfortable. The Germans are one of the founders of genocide, and that is why they can't see anything wrong with genocide. The killings of the Herero and the Nama people and the ways they were killed is not normal. There's no form of death committed by another individual that, number one, is considered normal. But how you guys went about it. So I think the Namibians need to step in. The indigenous Namibians need to step in and ask the world whether or not you would like us to step in. Not whether the oppressor wants to say that he doesn't want us to stir the pot. No, sir, no. Let's wait for the Namibians to say, stir the pot, so that the world can know about the genocide that you think should be kept a secret forever. No, let's not hide your secrets. You are the inventors of genocide. You have committed most of the genocides in the world. Just because people don't speak about it does not mean that we don't know about it. We know what you've done to the Herero and the Nama people. We are aware of it. So to think that you can just comfortably sit in your 60% of the land that is not your land and then be confused when people ask for their land back. Don't get it twisted. It's their land.
Okay. Also, don't talk about where stirring the pot nemeology comes from. Yeah, well, white people did that.
Right. I think I don't think we did a formal segment on this, but I think we should at some point.
Yep.
Because, again, I think it's just kind of ironic, and I'm going to relay this to us in a second, but I think it's funny how Germany is very quick to be like, oh, we will give reparations to people who are just as melanated as us. Meanwhile, they're complicit in this genocide in Namibia at the turn of the century.
And that woman put it in one of our last segments. It's Holocaust was one of the worst atrocities ever filmed. Theirs wasn't filmed.
Right.
So, Yeah.
And this one's not even, no one knows about this.
Yeah.
You know, you can make the argument that enough people know about the Rwandan genocide. I think that's our theme for tonight, just across the board. But like, no one's heard about this.
No.
Right. So I think that's more of a reason for us to probably talk about it soon. Soon is here.
Okay. Sure.
Soon is here tonight.
Collin,
So
that's what we sound like. Ew, yuck. That's what we sound like. Gross.
Yeah.
Gross. Why do people listen to us?
God. Because people love us.
I hear that. Yeah.
But anyway, so we're gonna look in Common Dreams. This is an opinion piece from Ramzy Baroud. We have read him before.
Yeah.
So he writes, from Namibia to Gaza with love. The Israeli brutality in Gaza, but also the Palestinian Samud, resilience and resistance are aspiring the global South to reclaim its centrality in anti-colonial liberation struggles. So he continues. Actually, let me get this slide over a little bit. There we go. The distance between Gaza and Namibia is measured in the thousands of kilometers, but its historical difference is much closer. This is precisely why Namibia was one of the first countries to take a strong stance against the Israeli genocide in Gaza. Namibia was colonized by the Germans in 1884, while the British colonized Palestine in the 1920s, handing the territory to the Zionist colonizers in 1948. Though the ethnic and religious fabric of both Palestine and Namibia are different, the historical experiences are similar. Though intersectionality is a much celebrated notion in Western academia, no academic theory is needed for oppressed, colonized nations in the global South to exhibit solidarity with one another. It is easy, however, to assume that the history which unifies many countries in the global South is only that of Western exploitation and victimization. It is also a history of collective struggle and resistance. Namibia has been inhabited since prehistoric times. This long-rooted history has allowed Namibians over the course of thousands of years to establish a sense of belonging to the land and to one another, something that the Germans did not understand or appreciate. When the Germans colonized Namibia, giving the name of German Southwest Africa, what a shitty name! They did all what other Western colonists had done, from Palestine to South Africa to Algeria, to virtually all global South countries. They attempted to divide the people, exploited their resources, and butchered those who resisted. Although a country with a small population, Namibians resisted their colonizers, resulted in the German decision to simply exterminate the natives, literally killing the majority of the population.
Oh. Sure. I guess that's an option for fucking colonizers. Nice.
Since the start of the Israeli genocide in Gaza, Namibia answered the call of solidarity with the Palestinians, along with many African and South American countries, including Colombia, Nicaragua, Cuba, South Africa, Brazil, China, and many others.
The
German genocide of the Namba and Hiroto people, 1904 to 1907, is known as the first genocide of the 20th century. The ongoing Israeli genocide in Gaza is the first genocide of the 21st century. The unity between Palestine and Namibia is now cemented through mutual suffering. But it's not Namibia that has launched a legal case against Germany at the ICJ, but rather Nicaragua, a Central American country that is also thousands of miles away from both Palestine and Namibia. The Nicaraguan case accuses Germany of violating the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. It rightly sees Germany as a partner in the ongoing genocide of the Palestinians. This accusation alone should terrify the German people, in fact the whole world, as Germany is affiliated with genocides from its early days as a colonial power. The horrific crime of the Holocaust and other mass killings carried out by the German government against Jews and other minority groups in Europe during World War II is a continuation of our German crimes committed against Africans decades earlier. The typical analysis of why Germany continues to support Israel is explained on the basis of German guilt over the Holocaust, which, as mentioned earlier, that Owen Jones talked about.
Yep.
This explanation, however, is partially illogical and partially erroneous. Illogical because if Germany has indeed internalized any guilt from its previous mass killings, it would make no sense for Berlin to add yet more guilt by allowing Palestinians to be butchered en masse. If guilt indeed exists,
Hamas.
it is not genuine. Yes.
Hamas.
Oh, I thought you said pause. But yeah, it's something to say.
No.
And erroneous because it completely overlooks the German genocide in Namibia. In fact, it took the German government until 2021 to acknowledge the horrific butchery in that poor African country, ultimately agreeing to pay merely 1 billion euros in quote-unquote community aid,
Where we hear that
which will be
before?
allocated over the course of 3 decades. Hold on to that because we're going to get
Yeah.
more into that in a few
Okay.
minutes.
Sure.
The German government's support of the Israeli war on Gaza is not motivated by guilt, but by a power paradigm that governs the relations among colonial countries. Many countries in the global south understand this logic very well, thus the growing solidarity with Palestine. The Israeli brutality in Gaza, but also the Palestinian Samud resilience and resistance are inspiring the global south to reclaim its centrality in anti-colonial liberation struggles. The revolution in the global south outlook, culminating in South Africa's case at the ICJ, and also the Nicaraguan lawsuit against Germany, indicates that the change is not the outcome of a collective emotional reaction. Instead, it is part and parcel of the shifting relationship between the global south and the global north. Africa has been undergoing a process of geopolitical restructuring for years. The anti-French rebellions in West Africa, demanding true independence from the continent's former colonial masters, in addition to the intense geopolitical competition involving Russia, China, and others, are all signs of changing times. And with this rapid rearrangement, a new political discourse and popular rhetoric are emerging, often expressed in the revolutionary language emanating from Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and others.
You see a lot of that shifting now.
Yes.
You know? So,
which we've also talked about.
I mean, they just kicked U.S. military people out who do those things. You know? See which one? Red Beret guy. That's what I remember. My face remembers that guy.
Ibrahim.
Burkina Faso.
Yes, Ibrahim Traore, I think is his name.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm glad you know. My brain don't remember that. It goes, you don't need that. Just Red Beret guy is enough. You know?
But the shift is not happening on the rhetorical front only.
Yeah.
The rise of BRICS as a powerful new platform for economic integration between Asia and the rest of the global south has opened up the possibility that alternatives to Western financial and political institutions are very much possible.
Mm-hmm.
In 2023, it was revealed that BRICS countries are now holding 32% of the world's total GDP, compared to 30% held by the G7 countries. There is much political value to this, as 4 of the 5 original founders of BRICS are strong and unapologetically supporters of the Palestinians. While South Africa has been championing the legal front against Israel, Russia, and China of battling the U.S. at the United Nations Security Council to institute a ceasefire, Beijing's ambassador to The Hague went as far as defending the Palestinian armed struggle as legitimate under international law. Now that global dynamics are working in favor for Palestinians, it's time for the Palestinian struggle to return to the embrace of the global south, where common histories will always serve as a foundation for meaningful solidarity. Thoughts before we go on?
I mean, sounds par for the course. Have you ever heard of the book? I think it's Gun, Steel, and one of those diseases. Like germs, guns, and steel, something like that. I mean, it talks about, like, specifically, and it does this in like a few examples, right, of colonialism in general, right, where it's like the advent of guns steel production and, chemical warfare, pretty much. Are a lot of the power, like, sources here. Like a lot of these places wouldn't be colonized if you couldn't bring a Gatling gun.
Right.
So, like that kind of stuff. You get into like Shaka Zulu and that whole thing. But I was just wondering if you had read that one. I think they made it into a documentary at some point. But decent thing to look at, if I remember correctly. I'm sure it's got some inconsistencies, but I remember reading parts of it. So, but yeah, talks about a lot of this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So let's continue with this. So I got a clip from TRT News. We like visuals here. So they will give a little bit more information regarding
News,
this genocide. Yeah. Regarding
Testosterone
this
replacement
genocide.
therapy news. I'm glad that they're doing that kind of stuff, Nice that they branch out like that.
So let's play the whole thing, and then I have some thoughts.
Here, let's do this. Let's go 1.25.
Germany announced its decision to intervene on Israel's behalf in ICJ case. Namibia slams Germany's support to Israel in genocide case.
Why is Namibia furious at Germany's ICJ's intervention supporting Israel?
A country that committed genocide more than once is defending another accused of committing genocide. Ironic? Let's break it down. Berlin had offered to intervene and participate in Israel's defense in a case South Africa recently brought to the International Court of Justice, accusing Tel Aviv of committing genocide in Palestine's Gaza. Namibia, a former German colony, was quick to condemn Berlin on X, saying the move shows Germany had failed to draw lessons from its genocide in the Southwest African country. Namibia's reaction then piqued the curiosity of online users, with many saying they were unaware of the atrocities Germany had committed on Namibian soil.
Actually, can you pause here?
Yeah.
Actually, just as a side, I actually didn't know about the Namibian genocide, honestly, until when I started doing this show.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think just with all the research and with all the articles that I think we have read collectively over the past 2 years, like I see a lot of stuff that we may not necessarily say on here, but we read a lot here. So this issue I've known about it in passing, just given, the research, but obviously not necessarily thinking of where this will fit in terms of, making this a story. And I think now, obviously, is the perfect time to talk about it. But even here, as they said, like when Namibia called out Germany for their atrocities and their complicity in what's happening in Gaza, you saw like a lot of people were like, wait, what are you talking about? So this is why I think, especially in independent media, we have a responsibility to kind of help people make these connections, so that it's a lot easier to kind of make the association of, oh, this is happening here, the same thing that's happening in X country, the same thing is happening in this country. So as a friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice, always says, the struggle is international. So we want to make sure that people have that kind of context in terms of what's happening here or even somewhere else, maybe also be happening somewhere else. And so we need to have that solidarity within, the global community, especially in terms of atrocities like these.
So, well, looks like we got ourselves a reader.
Yes, I read.
In what is often called Germany's forgotten genocide, German colonialist commanders committed grave atrocities against the peaceful people of Namibia, particularly the Hereros and Namas, between 1904 and 1908. It began when German settlers invaded Namibia in 1884 and enslaved the indigenous people, using them as laborers on their own lands, as the settlers continued colonizing and occupying more and more Namibian territory. By January 1904, a group of Hereros led by Samuel Maherero decided they had had enough. They organized a rebellion against the German colonizers in which 100 settlers were killed. However, the Hereros stood no chance against the Germans, who possessed advanced weaponry. In 1904, the Hereros were cornered by German commander Major Theodor Lutwin, and a surrender was negotiated. The German government in Berlin grew frustrated with Lutwin's slowness, however, and appointed a new lieutenant general, Lothar von Trotha, who abandoned all peace-oriented negotiations and circled the Hereros with his troops, killing an estimated 3,000 to 5,000 of them. The remaining Hereros who were cornered at the edge of the Kalahari Desert were forced to flee to Botswana, which was then under the British protectorate. Most died of starvation or thirst, or from drinking water poisoned by the German settlers. Trotha continued his killing spree unabated, and ordered his men to pursue the Hereros. In October 1904, he then issued a proclamation stating that he would kill each and every Herero, armed or unarmed, women and children. All were slaughtered in cold blood. By November 1904, the order was overturned and the surviving Hereros were forced into concentration camps. In 1905, another resistant group emerged against the German colonialist, the Nama. For 2 years, they fought the Germans, incurring many casualties. The surviving Namas were sent to the concentration camps alongside the Hereros. They were overworked in severe conditions, tortured, and some of the women among them were subject to sexual violence and rape by the settler colonists. Within a year, the majority of the population died, with historical assessment estimating that 100,000 Hereros, constituting 80% of their population, and 10,000 Namas, equivalent to 50% of their population, were killed.
Jesus Christ.
In 2008, Germany returned human remains to Namibia, including 19 human skulls, 5 skeletons, and numerous skin fragments that are now being housed in museums, hospitals, and churches in Namibia. And in July 2021, the German government finally recognized the atrocities it had committed in Namibia and officially acknowledged the massacres as a genocide.
Wir bezeichnen heute diese Ereignisse jetzt auch offiziell als das, was sie gewesen sind, ein Völkermord. Wir bekennen uns damit auch zu unserer historischen Verantwortung.
The German government also agreed to provide Namibia with development funds of 1.1 billion euros over the course of 30 years to aid its infrastructure and for health training, although it refused to make reparations for its historical actions and neglected to offer individual payments to the genocide survivors' descendants. Namibia says Germany has yet to fully atone for the genocide it committed on Namibian soil, and is making it clear that Berlin cannot morally express a commitment to the United States Genocide Convention while it is supporting the equivalent of a Holocaust and genocide in Gaza.
I mean...
Sounds familiar.
In what way, Reef? Explain how it sounds familiar to you.
I mean, poisoning water, encircling people with much better, like, armament capabilities. You know, sounds very familiar to recent events. So, you know.
Right.
Like,
I think...
What? I don't know why they had skulls they had to give back, though. That's a bit macabre and weird. You know, I mean, I don't know why that stands out as opposed to the genocide to me, but, you know.
Well, I think it's the idea of, you know, returning the remains to their home, which makes sense. But, so, a couple of things. One, obviously, could you imagine if we learned about this in school? And especially, you know, for Black people, especially for African Americans, and Africans too, being able to kind of, oh shit, you know, like being able to make those connections in terms of slave tactics, same shit that happened here, same shit that happened in Namibia. Like, so I think that would be kind of wild for, you know, Black people here, especially to kind of understand that our suffering, and this was recent. That's the thing. This was relatively recent, within the last 100 years. You know, by this time, you know, we were under Reconstruction / Jim Crow. So they weren't necessarily killing us, but they were segregating us at that point in this country. So that's the first thing I thought that was very interesting. But the other thing, and I know you know what I'm going to now, is the idea of, you know, reparations and how Germany determined how they were going to atone for their crimes, so to speak, in terms of giving, you know, I think it was equivalent of 2 billion euro a year. For the next 30 years to community aid and health, which it's yeah, the argument is, why not give settlements to families of whom, you know, you destroyed?
Yeah.
Which is the same case that for African Americans here and Black people living in the West are making as well. So for those people who, especially for like the FBAs and those people who are like, oh, our situation with reparations has nothing to do with anywhere else in the world. Not so. If you look at Namibia, they're also asking for reparations as well against Germany. So I think that's something, I think that's very significant. And I've said this, you know, in terms of on Twitter, in terms of, you know, it took Germany how long? Like over 100, almost 120 years to acknowledge, oh yeah, we committed a genocide. And I think that's one thing moving forward that I think we need to be very careful of in terms of what's happening in Gaza. Given our history, like Rwanda, same thing. They did not declare that a genocide until well after close to 1 million Tutsis were dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Namibia, they took 100 years for it to call a genocide. I very much doubt, given our history, that people are going to determine what's happening in Gaza a genocide until
years from now.
Years from now. We're saying it now, but the powers that be are not going to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But, and I also said this on Twitter, the idea of reparations for Palestinians is going to come up at some point. It's not going to happen now, but it's definitely going to happen in the future, especially given the rise of death that is occurring. And we're going to talk more about that in a later segment in terms of the grave, mass graves that have just been discovered in Khan Yunis. That conversation is going to be had. And so, and I didn't say this on Twitter, I was going to put it, but I'm not sure how people were going to feel about it. But I would say here, you cannot talk about reparations for Palestinians without talking about reparations for Black people, whether it's in Namibia, whether it is in the West. So there will have to be some sort of solidarity, you know, I think for Black people and Palestinians in more ways than I think we're thinking of right now. Yes, in terms of our history, like, you know, given, you know, the 60s and the civil rights movement, obviously. But I would argue even with this, we have a lot more solidarity with Africans, especially with Namibia, given what has happened to them in terms of their genocide. They're also making the call for reparations as well. So, you know, so, and I know, or I'm going to guess, Zionists are not going to hear any of it in terms of having to atone for what they're currently doing, you know, to Palestinians right now. So it's going to be a matter of time where this conversation is going to be brought up. But I think it'll be interesting to see how Black people are going to respond to it, you know, given our needs and our call for reparations, depending where in the world you are. So, yeah, I think, you know, we're just kind of setting ourselves up for more stuff going down in terms of more demands being made. And again, it's not going to happen now, but it's coming. So, but yeah, I think just the idea of, I don't want to make people upset, but the reality is it's going to take, unless a miracle happens, it's going to take a long time for the acknowledgement from Israel and the West that a genocide is occurring on an uncollected scale is going to happen. And I feel that by that time, there's going to be more lives lost. And I actually don't feel great about that, because I think given what we've been seeing, it's very clear what's happening.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're not at the place yet where there's going to be a collective stance on that as of right now. And given in what we've seen in history, it's very upsetting in terms of that complicity.
Well, would you say talking about that kind of stuff now might get us demonetized or censored, possibly?
Well, I'm not sure if necessarily I don't know. I
Mm.
mean, but again, it's the idea of these conversations. Well, I'll say this. If we're going to get demonetized or people, and I know there's going to be people even in our community who do feel a way about reparations and all of that, I think generally for Black people. And I think it's fair to have that discussion. You know, but at the same time, we do have a responsibility to kind of share the truth. And the reality is, given my history, that's my truth. That my ancestors, were slaves in the Caribbean. And while, and not to say I'm ashamed of it, but it's the idea of, look, my family was taken from Nigeria and Cameroon to be, free labor for the empire. In my case, the British and the French Empire. And there has been there needs to be atonement for that, in a way that if you know that you've done wrong, you have to make amends for it. And all I'm saying is right now, in terms of, we're seeing what's happening in Gaza right now. We're seeing the impact that it's having on families right now. And yeah, they're not going to necessarily talk about reparations now, but that conversation is going to be coming. If we're going to be demonetized for having this conversation, well, fine. But the conversation is going to be had at some point. And I think, if anything, we might be probably the first in independent media, I think, that have made these connections and in terms of, this is going to be a conversation that will be had soon. So, I mean, we're demonetized anyway for speaking truth.
Yeah.
So I think it's just for us to kind of lean into it, since, it is the reality of what is going to be for Black people and what will be for Collin Stelling's movie.
Well, that's why you can go to ko-fi.com/indie news network and the QR code on your screen. If you want to leave us a super chat or tip here and there, it's always appreciated. If you can't give monetarily, hit that like button. Tap that subscribe button over there. Share this video. Why not? We're trying to get to 2K subs. We're almost there. We're working on it. Leave a comment even. What are you doing? Anyway, before we get to that, I'm going to go to Rockfin and Rumble and check on the people who support alternative platforms. Look at you out there doing it. Rumble says there's people watching, but no one's in chat. Get in chat, people. What are you doing? And then I'm going to leave those in chat for people. There you go. And there you go. I did Rockfin.
So
yes, sir.
While you're looking at that, Leslie Donaldson in the chat said, getting tossed from YouTube is going to become a badge of validity pretty soon at this rate. Go boldly, INN. Thank you. I mean, we've been demonetized already. We are shadow banned. We've been heavily suppressed. The fact that we barely went just under 2K, and it's been a struggle to get that last 1,000. It's been a lot slower than it was our first year.
Unless we want to talk about all the dramatic nonsense that really doesn't matter.
Right. And
but anyway,
but we're still here, and we're very thankful, that our audience is really committed to us. It's small but mighty, and and we're still here. And I think Reef and I have made the agreement that as long as we can or are willing and able, we will continue to do it, regardless of what happens to us. I think we've been very fortunate that our channel has not been shut down completely. But we're also kind of thankful that as Reef says to me, has to say to me often, the audience that we have, we earn.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily people having people hate watch us, I think, or trolling us in the chat. I think for the most part is people who do care about us, who generally care about what we have to say, and I think do appreciate the work that we're trying to do, even though we're a little itty bitty, channel in the face of independent media. But but
Denver Attaway says, I listen to you guys because you do good work and good perspective. Anna Mayers says that Colonialist Playbook 101. And Denver Attaway says, friends don't let friends genocide without cover.
Friends don't let friends what?
Commit genocide without cover.
Right.
Pretty much.
So, yeah. So, like I said, hopefully when we clip this out, share it with your friends, especially the people who are like, what's happening is not a genocide. Share, yeah. Like, talk about Namibia. Talk about Rwanda. Talk about, I know this is the anniversary of the Armenian genocide today. Like, there's so many atrocities that happen in our recent history, Namibia aside, that people are not talking about, are probably unknown, that we need to make those connections in terms of what's happening with Gaza. But I think given the story that you're talking about now, I think among the youth, they're definitely getting it.
Well, let's get to that. Speaking of youths, the things are happening on college campuses. Collin, have you been looking at that? I'm sure your feed is inundated with stuff about this.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about the secret Taskforce here in a second. But you'll see why and how it relates. But, first, we're going to look at things happening over at Columbia, right? Columbia University students have taken over the school. Columbia has announced classes will become fully virtual for the rest of the year as Palestinian protests continue. And they do stuff like this. This is the terrifying, the antiseptic protests. Just dancing, just having a good old time.
They were like, it sounds so dramatic that we're going to suspend only virtual. Like, it's final season. They're only going to be in school for 2 or 3 more weeks because of it. They graduate or they're done with classes for the spring semester. So, shut up! Like, so dramatic.
Shut up. Just shut up.
It just gives them 2 more. It just gives them two or 3, at most 2 to 4 more weeks on campus, and then either they leave or depending what's going to happen, who knows what's going to happen over the summer. But so dramatic.
This is the kind of stuff that's actually happening to those people that were dancing. This is not at that specific university, another university, right? We're at Cal Poly Humboldt, right? I don't know if people know where that's at. But this is the kind of stuff they had to deal with. I mean, I think we get the gist on that,
Yeah, we have that as a shirt. Go buy it on our store. We have
we do.
Based on a shirt.
And what is it? IndieNews.store, I think, is the thing for that.
Indie, help us.
It should be. I think that's what it is. We got a thing at the end of the show. We'll plug it. But this is at that same place, right? Cal Humboldt. Look what we actually have to deal with. This is what that turns I mean, and I know it gets like, they start dragging people out. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. Guy got hit with a water bottle, Collin. He got hit with a water bottle. You know. Why is that so funny? The funny noise. Anyway, oh boing! Someone made this because of that. And y'all work fast. Y'all people work way too fast. Y'all cannot be putting that out so quickly.
Yeah.
But anyway, Manar Adley, police just broke up and arrested all the students of the University of Minnesota. Right? So Minnesotan universities are also in this problem, right? We're gonna get to more of that in a bit. But yeah, charging them with trespassing and banning all students from campus for 1 year. So fun, right? Nice of them.
Yeah.
So the University of Minnesota just ordered janitors to shut off the water supply there. They locked the bathrooms and the locked doors to Kaufman Union, where pro-Palestine protesters set up an encampment and whatnot. Doors to Kaufman University lock at 11 p.m., but I'm watching janitors lock up at 8. When asked why they're locking up this early, they said these are orders from the administration because of the encampment. I mean, what does that sound like you, Collin? I mean, that sounds like some fucking what they do in Israel. They shut off the water supplies, they lock the doors.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So anyway, breaking early today, it leaked that Columbia University threatened its negotiations to sic the National Guard on its own students. The message from the CU president, Manoush Shafiq, seems to confirm such as she proclaims that negotiations have a deadline of 12 a.m. This is an egregious threat to the student body. Manoush Shafiq is dancing with the threat of another Kent state. She would rather have her students face deadly force than to divest from Israel's genocide against Palestinians. Keep eyes on Colombia. But yeah, there's this letter, you know, pretty much says, I'm grateful for the support of the city and state officials, right? That kind of stuff. She's pretty much looking for a National Guard assistance at this point, which I think she got. So a friend of the show, Brett Wilkins, is also being brought into this in regards to someone that called out some Zionist on campus, right? And they're blaming him. You know, we just heard that resistance is justified chant, right? You know, the co-chair of San Francisco Berniecrat says Hamas is resistance, whether you like their methods or not. Right? There's old Brett Wilkins. Look, someone says, say his name and tags Brett. He's been on the forefront of this increasingly evil cult for several years. He's one of the head vampires. Here's what it led to. I'm not hating Jews. They say I'm protesting a government. We've been saying that. I'm glad you've been listening. Maybe actually believe us. Something like that. I don't know. Anyway, Brett Wilkins responds, say his name, say it, and while you're at it, say Rappaport, my Jewish mother's name. You know, which is just funny. Just funny. I'm sure you love seeing that Michael Rappaport guy going around. Makes you feel all homely and whatnot. Anyway.
Shout out to Brett, we love you.
Stop anti-Septicism. Hamas is resistance. Brett Wilkins, right? Brett being brought up on this again. Anyway, he replies, anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas. This is part of our strategy to isolate the Palestinians in Gaza from the Palestinians in the West Bank. Benjamin Netanyahu. So...
And I tagged in this, you didn't do it, but I tagged actual clips of
him saying that?
Israeli officials basically saying, oh yeah, in order to prevent a two-state solution, we're funding Hamas.
Yeah.
So
Hamas.
So those of you who follow me, on Twitter, find that clip.
Yeah.
And send it to your Zionist friends.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So little closer to home for you. We're gonna head to New York, right? Over here, and look what's happening there. Look, they've got those pig-shaped human objects there. You know, dragging people, peaceful protesters away from things, right? So this is what your tax dollars pay for, people, by the way. I don't know if you know. You know, I mean, college students.
Right.
That's how all this force is needed for. So, and not just the students, Care Bear. Guess what? They're taking the staff too.
Why New York? University faculty members being arrested. Academics aren't allowed to oppose the hashtag Gaza genocide. Is this the land of the free?
And in front of his own office, he says, I'm being arrested. You know, so
honestly, I'm getting PTSD.
Yes.
It's bringing me back to 4 years ago during the George Floyd protest. This is exact what I had to go through then. It's exactly what these college students are going through.
They brought out counterterrorism, Collin. Like, what is this, Counter-Strike? What are we doing? Like, anyway. Yeah, Lafredo over the gray zone, counterterrorism NYPD forces are now arriving to Columbia campus. Right? So, I brought this, Collin. Why would people be afraid of Columbia University students being so vocal about this? We thinks. Well, this lady's going to tell us.
You know why Columbia University is freaking out about this protest right now? It's because the kids involved aren't just working class, hardworking kids. Those are kids with privilege. Those are the kids of Congress members and business execs getting arrested. That's a big deal. Columbia University is where the next generation of leaders is supposed to be born. The next generation of oppressors. And now we have all of these young, rich kids using their privilege to fight against a system. Yeah, of course the system's freaking out. And that's not to say that there aren't students that are on that lawn right now risking everything, because there are. But a lot of those kids are weaponizing their privilege against the system that gave them that privilege. And that's also pretty badass.
There's another reason too that Savvy brought up. Those of you who watch her, she mentioned, well, Columbia is like that whole part of New York.
Yeah.
Heavily Jewish.
Right? Yeah.
So the fact that it started, so like, I don't want to say it's like the epicenter, but like there's a lot of Jewish influence at Columbia. Number one. Number two, the reason why South Africa, like the apartheid in South Africa was diminished was due to college students divesting, pushing colleges to divest from South Africa. So, of course, this was several years ago, many decades ago. But like the idea that this is happening again, you know, with Israel, you know, that's not good. And the fact that now that it's starting to spread on different and you know, as we said, you know, they're going to be the semester is almost over.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have college students with free time.
Yeah.
Over the summer to, you know, like
playing,
to continue doing this if they choose to.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're only going to, I can only predict that this is only going to get worse over the next few months. And God forbid, you know, this will kind of run into both the Republican and Democrat conventions over the summer as well.
Well,
because
speaking of Jewish influence at Columbia, have you seen this guy? This I know.
Davidai, yes.
I think that's it. I mean, I'm not going to play
you saw at Columbia University is
much of him.
Support for Hamas. Holding signs saying El Qassam Brigade, your next target, pointing at Jewish students. So
Press X
here
for
you
doubt.
have it.
Press X for doubt.
U.S. citizens are being held hostage in Gaza by Hamas and by the Islamic Jihad.
Yeah.
You have students
Yeah.
at Columbia University and faculty at Columbia University who are cheering on Hamas.
Hamas. Everything's Hamas. Hamas is all around you, in the trees, inside you. They're in your heart. Okay? Omnipresent. I mean, this is just...
And we'll call on the government.
Unhinged.
Yeah, unhinged nonsense.
Supporters. We believe in love. We believe in free speech. But we believe that enough is enough.
Bullshit. Bullshit, I say.
You do not. You do not believe in love, because if you do, you'd be more concerned with what's happening to Gazans right now.
Well,
you do not care.
Ironically, Columbia University professor and former Israeli soldier Shai Davidai. Blue Abadi Davidai, that has family connections to Israel's weapons production. His father, Eli Davidai, is an Israeli businessman who served as general manager of the company ARC, which provides components for weapons used by the Israeli military. So, yeah.
Right.
I mean, useful.
So, also, remember, who else works at Columbia? The witch herself.
Yes. Yeah.
So Columbia is a school with it's an Ivy, right? So it has a lot of influence. So the fact that it's more or less become an epicenter for what's going on right now is a big deal. So that's why they're scared. That's why, we see all these Zionists like popping out of the woodwork, basically being like ranting and raving and crying like babies over what's happening, and and it's just funny because 4 years ago, and I tweeted this earlier today, 4 years ago, at that time we had to wear masks, but everyone was saying you need to wear a mask because you're going to get doxxed, you need it to be safe, and all this kind of stuff. And this is what those students are doing because they know these motherfuckers are essentially trying to dox them, God forbid. And these people are like, well, they're wearing masks because they're Hamas and all this other kind of bullshit.
Hamas.
So,
but anyway, speaking of crybabies, sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes things don't work out. Care Bear.
Media in, is the university keeping the media out? This is the COO of the university. Are we not letting the media in? What? Can you back up, please? My card has been deactivated? Why? Can you back up, please?
Wait, what? What happened? Professor, what happened?
Wait. Everybody, my card has been deactivated. This is Cass Holloway, the COO.
I'm a victim. My card's been deactivated. I'm a victim. I'm a victim because my card doesn't work. Please recognize my victimhood. So yeah. I just thought that was fun for him taking an L. But anyway, don't worry. He still has places that play him, like I-24.
This is an important topic. This is not just about Columbia. This is every U.S. college. They have said
Hamas
they are going to bring down Columbia first, and then as a domino effect, we'll have all other universities. But I want to make clear one thing before I talk about my own actions. What we're seeing now at Columbia, and I don't use this word lightly, we're not seeing ideological war. We're not seeing support for terrorism. We are seeing terrorism. Last night we had...
So they just are Hamas. Everyone's Hamas.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, they had watermelon. I was so scared. They had balloons with watermelon on them. How dare they? Like, could you imagine people like that? I mean, yes, because you're people, but like, people were this dumb in the civil rights movement too? Like,
I'm sure.
Sure. oh God, they're on our buses now. You know, like, oh, anyway. No, I don't want to listen to you anymore. Speaking of people not to listen to, AOC spent part of her preach praising the anti-genocide protesters, Columbia and other campuses across the country, only to later take a picture with the same guy students are currently trying to protest. Yay. Yeah. You know who that guy is on the right here? That guy right there?
It's yes.
Yes?
That's Ed Markey.
It is Ed Markey. Good for you. Ding, ding, ding. Colin gets 2 points.
There's always the macro and then there's the micro.
By the way, every pair of the shades they have on, $200. By the way.
Sure.
Gold banded Ray-Bans, $200. Just saying. You know. I'm sure we all would love to have $200 Ray-Bans. I'm sure they're nice. Bring the ruckus to full-time nursing home staffer in less than 5 years. You know?
Mr. President!
Look, there's Barney. Barney Sanders.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
You know, AOC, Ed Markey. It's just a cavalcade of bullshit. So, you know, when politicians are giving you lip service in one direction, they're fucking you in the other, is the point of that. So keep that in mind. Speaking of, here's another politician, Ilhan Omar, right? She probably has some words to say about this Columbia incident.
Well, considering that her daughter got suspended.
Yep, I'm getting that.
See, we have had pro-Israeli demonstrations on campus.
No. But just
not,
a protest that was
not,
against Muslims.
No, I have
Have you
not
seen one against Arabs?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Palestinians?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Jewish people? Have you seen a protest saying we are against Jewish people?
No, I have seen.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. So no. Ain't no antiseptic nonsense here. Get the fuck out of here with that shit.
Has been
you know, and like you said, right, Ilhan Omar's daughter Isra Hersey gets suspended from Bernard College for attending Palestinian protests at Columbia. So you're at a completely other college, and actions you take at a completely other facility somehow gets you suspended? How does that work? Anyway. But yeah, so you're wondering why some of this might be happening, Colin. Well,
yes.
William I. Robinson is going to explain some of this to you that you might not be aware of, although you being in, you know, of the academic sector, you might know some of it. So he writes, Israel has formed a task force to carry out covert campaigns at U.S. universities. Shocking, I know. A major Israeli news site says Israeli Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs ministries are behind the operation. So in case you're wondering where I got it from, I'm getting it from the Zionists themselves. They're telling us this. As worldwide protest escalates over Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza, academic freedom and free speech are under all-out attack on university campuses in the U.S., not just from university administrations and pro-Israeli groups, but now directly from the highest level of the Israeli state. In a story that's been largely ignored in the Western press, I wonder why, the Israeli news website Ynet News, I guess, one of the largest media outlets in the country, reported that the Israeli government has launched what appears to be a wide-ranging, covert campaign to harass and intimidate students, faculty, and administrators into silence. According to the report, the Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs Ministry have established a task force to carry out shaming and pressuring operations at U.S. universities. The task force, chaired by former Minister Eli Cohen and led by senior government officials, drew up a multifaceted action plan, according to Ynet News, involving political and psychological operations against its critics. The plan aims at inflicting economic and employment consequences on anti-Semitic read pro-Palestine anti-genocide students and compelling universities to distance them from their campuses. The plan specifies that actions taken should not have the signature of the state of Israel on it. I wonder why they wouldn't want their name on it, Care Bear. Seems odd, no? The first plank in the plan is described as the consciousness axis. What? Why would you name something an axis if you're trying to be the good guys? Can you?
Right.
Like, the last time people were named the Axis, they weren't good. It calls for personal, economic, and employment repercussions for the distributors of anti-Semitism. According to the plan, the interministerial task force will carry out naming and shaming by publicizing the names of those generating anti-Semitism on campuses, both students and faculty, and impacting the employment of those identified as the perpetrators of anti-Semitism. Those targeted will struggle to find employment in the U.S. and will pay a significant economic price for their conduct. What does that sound like, Care Bear?
It's happening already.
Yeah. So
This has happened already.
The plan specifies that the foreign ministry and Israeli representatives in the U.S. are in contact with professional unions to recruit them to act against anti-Semitism and exert pressure on university heads. It notes that pressuring employers to blacklist pro-Palestinian students has already happened in major law firms in the U.S., and that if a university knows that the chances of its students finding employment have decreased, the university administration will act against those anti-Semitic students to avoid harming the university's ranking. So
basically, go back to that paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
Back
this way. There you go.
So I want to read that again. It notes that pressuring employers to blacklist pro-Palestinian students has already happened in major law firms in the U.S., and that if a university knows that the chances of its students finding employment have decreased, the university administration will act against those anti-Semitic students to avoid harming the university's ranking. So, in other words, students who cannot get jobs due to what's happening or being like, they're basically trying to cover their asses to keep the appearance of, and these rankings, fun fact, I used to work at, when I was at Boston College for undergrad, I used to work in the administration's office giving tours or whatever. These rankings are a big deal. They tell you that they're not, but they are. So this is just a cover because they can't have students who graduate who can't say they get a job. That's part of the ranking in terms of how successful students are able to get employment after they graduate. That's part of what that ranking goes to.
Gotcha.
So to give that context to that. So the fact that if they're doxing students, to the point where they're not able to get jobs, that's not going to look good on the university.
Yeah.
So essentially, this is a way to basically be like, keep them in line, otherwise, you're not going to look good. You're not going to present very well to students who
and we'll kick you out if you continue. So it doesn't affect our numbers. Like in the case of so in the most high impact instance of this plan of action, the president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, and the University of Pennsylvania, Elizabeth McGill, were both forced to resign in early 2024 and late 2023, respectively, not because they opposed the Israeli perpetrated genocide or came out in support of Palestinian lives, but because in defense of free speech, they did not crack down hard enough on Palestinian solidarity actions on their campuses. Such censorship has swept.
Case, he did it too late, too little, too late.
Such censorship has swept university campuses across the U.S., and some professors have even lost their jobs. Among other cases, a professor at Texas Tech University was suspended in early March for his pro-Palestine social media posts, and a tenured professor of political science at Indiana University was barred from teaching in January because he booked a room for a pro-Palestinian activity. And I know in Texas right now they're also protesting, I think at Texas Tech and other places. And I saw one of them where they were talking to, they had like the mounted police, right, which is like DPS or whatever over there. And people were literally chanting, "Who killed Uvalde?" DPS, like to their faces, which is good for you. That goes hard. Keep that energy up. So off campus, there's been a wave of repression by corporations against employees who have posted their opposition to the genocide on social media. And Truthout has previously reported on retaliation by law firms against their employee and recruits. Artists have had their exhibitions canceled for merely posting pro-Palestinian messages on their social media, and authors have had their book talks suspended for signing petitions against the genocide. Such silencing incidents are now commonplace across the U.S. Under the heading Legal Access, the Israeli government plan calls for taking legal action outside the law. What outside the law means exactly is not specified in the article. Against activities and organizations that pose a threat to Jewish and Israeli students on campuses, such as Students for Justice in Palestine, it adds that Israel will hold discussions with elements from the U.S. Department of Justice to map out legal tools that can be used. The suspension in December by Columbia University of the campus chapters of Jewish Voices for Peace and Students for Justice in Palestine was the most well-publicized case, but such crackdowns on pro-Palestinian student activism have taken place at many universities. On my own campus, the University of California at Santa Barbara, the administration recently indefinitely closed the Multicultural Center and threatened to sanction pro-Palestinian students. The MCC had put up a signage where students had written messages against Zionism and the Israeli-perpetrated genocide in Gaza in solidarity with the Palestinian freedom struggle, and in opposition to the university's administration's pro-Israeli tilt and refusal to condemn the genocide. The signage has been removed, and campus is conducting a bias incident review based on potential discrimination related to protected categories that include religion, citizenship, and nation of ethnic origin, stated Chancellor Henry Yang in a February 27 university-wide email. The posting of such messages is a violation of our principles of community and inclusion. But many faculty do not agree with the Chancellor's characterization of Palestine solidarity as discrimination. The MCC has been a critical site for naming and resisting intersectional injustice in our campus community and around the globe. Read a statement released by the Department of Black Studies lambasting the closure. As such, it is aligned with so much of what we do in our teaching, scholarship, university service, and broader practices of decolonization. The MCC's temporary closure deprives multiple campus communities of a public intellectual space in an increasingly hostile and restricted academic environment. Under the heading Economic Access, Tel Aviv's action plan states that Israel will identify leading donors within the Jewish and Israeli communities and enlist them in the struggle to serve as a lever of pressure on university heads to act against anti-Semitism. This is where I think it's really the problem, right?
Donors.
Yeah, money. Money's the problem. So Israel will exert pressure, right? Sanctions against universities receiving federal or state public funding for non-addressing anti-Semitism on campuses. In the Harvard case, in fact, wealthy donors withdrew hundreds of millions of dollars in donations to the university's endowment to pressure the administration to crack down on pro-Palestinian solidarity. So
you know what?
Finally,
good. That people honestly good. Because there's no way that donors should be giving that much money for influence at a university. Absolutely no way.
Yeah.
No way. You know,
well, in fact, they were already doing it. So now that this is the influence that they're putting down on the table. You know, it's like, we're going to withhold this money now. You remember all that money you guys had? Now you don't get that.
Right.
So, Finally, the explanatory access involves creating a toolbox available to pro-Israeli professors and students, assisting them in addressing claims against the pro-Israel side physically and especially on social networks. The Foreign Ministry will explain the option of launching a campaign on social networks focused on campuses. This element of the action plan is not new. Training professors and students to repress pro-Palestinian sentiment on their campuses has been taking place for many years. Among other programs, Hezbollah Fellowship, Hezbollah in the Hebrew word for public diplomacy, that is propaganda, are offered to Jewish students at U.S. university campuses to travel to Israel, where they are indoctrinated into Zionism and taught how to practice Hezbollah when they return home. Hezbollah offices are maintained in several Israeli ministries, including the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Diaspora Affairs, Strategic Affairs, and the IDF. The press office of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. did not respond to Truthout's request for comment on this action plan.
By the way, I work near the embassy, and there's still signs. There's still signs for Free Palestine around. It's funny because they have a double fence. There's a fence within a fence. They've had that anyway, but now, like, the outer fence, there's basically signs of Palestine. That's also the place where Aaron Bushnell, self-emulated. So, and there are people even within, like, I pass it almost nearly every day or every other day on work. So, like, there's still people like going there, protesting there still, so that embassy has been inundated with signs of Palestine since then, so it's, but yeah, it's just as that aside. But yeah, this is just a way to intimidate students, faculty, mostly students, to get in line. Otherwise, essentially they're fearing like, oh, your future is fucked if you are basically pro-Palestine, which is fucked in of itself.
I mean, the university's future, everything. And I'm sure companies are getting the same problem, similar to YouTube. And if you tend to be pro-Palestinian on YouTube, you get demonetized. Funny how that works. So, you can go to ko-fi.com/Indie News Network if you want to get around that system a little bit. Scan that QR code you see on the screen, right? Or put !donate in the live chat. You can also go to Rockfin and Rumble, which are in the description below if you want to, support us on other platforms. But if you can't do that, like and subscribe here, share this stream, comment, let us know what you think. Very easy stuff to do. So I'm going to leave Rockfin and Rumble again for the people in chat. If you're not subscribed there already, go do that. And then we're going to get to your story, Collin. Let's go to Rockfin. Oh, tip $2 from Anna Mayers. I feel like 6 months from now, we will see students jailed telling their stories about being shipped to Amazon factories for free labor and unable to call home because they still have student loans and must work off their debts. Thank you, Anna Mayers, for the little tip there over on the Rockfin.
And I agree. Like, this is only going to get worse.
Yeah.
What's next month? Because again, it's graduation season. So there's going to be, I remember, last year, we talked about how Howard University allowed Biden to speak at their graduation, and basically they all fell in line like good little, I'm not going to say the word here, but they all fell in line. Mostly, there were a few warriors there that actually stood their ground. And I think we're beginning to see a change in terms of some of the rhetoric and some of the discontent that, especially at HBCUs, are not having what's going on in Gaza. So, Biden is allegedly supposed to be talking at Morehouse. And what I read in a report today, they're like, and thank God, they're like faculty that were like held to the no. We do not want him speaking in terms of what's happening in Gaza right now. They should not have him for other reasons, student loan debt, but no, because he went to Morehouse and basically was like a couple years ago was like, oh, I'm going to ensure that if you went to an HBCU and you make under $125,000 a year, your student loan debt is going to be canceled. Has that happened?
No.
So that was kind of my take last year when I was talking about Howard, of how basically they were complicit in what Biden said then, and they didn't call him out on it that day. It will be very interesting, I think, especially with a lot of these graduation speeches. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of protests. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of dissent. So I think next month is going to be an interesting month in terms of seeing a lot of this dissent, and seeing a lot of these encampments is only going to get worse. In some ways for the better. But it's not going to be looking good for Biden administration and the Zionist lobby in terms of the PR and of what they're trying to do to try and get everyone in line. Not looking good for them for the next few months.
Indy on the Rumble, McCarthyism is back, folks. Go fuck Google says, yep, McCarthyism made popular by neolibs and their shitlib followers under Russiagate. Thanks. I hope I put enough sarcasm on that. Thanks. But anyway, all right, you ready for yours?
Yeah. Unfortunately, this is not a lighthearted. Well, most of our stories are not lighthearted, but this in particular, this should be getting a lot more attention than it is. So I'm kind of a little disappointed, I think, especially in independent media, that has not reported on this. I know Russell from Due Dissonance talked about this on the Jimmy George show, I think yesterday, I believe.
Yeah.
I know Richie Medhurst also talked about this. We actually are going to feature Richie in the segment later. And as far as I know, that's it. Which again, I think is very disappointing given the severity of this story. But even Mondo Weiss, kind of making the connection to your last segment, tweeted out, the current anti-Semitism panic at Columbia is manufactured hysteria weaponized to quell legitimate political speech on campus and give cover to the larger project of ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, and now, of course, Gaza. So that's going to refer to, well, part of this refers to the mass graves that have just been discovered at Nasser Hospital in the Yan Kunis region of Gaza over the weekend, which we're going to get to in a minute. Richard Redhurst tweeted, frankly, I just don't give a damn about students on elite uni campuses being arrested right now. I'm more interested in mass graves being discovered in Gaza. Are these not the issues the students are protesting in the first place? Why no coverage in the press? You know why.
Yep.
I want to be very fair. I think what's happening on these college campuses are important.
Yep.
In terms of demanding divestment from Israel. But
I can see why Richie would feel that way for sure.
Yeah. No, I definitely get why Richie feels this way. But if anything, I think the argument he's making here is that this story regarding mass graves should add fuel to the fire of what's going on in these encampments right now. And it's not being talked about. So, and it's being suppressed somewhat because we know, well, we're going to talk about why. And I'm sure our audience is very smart to figure out the why. So speaking of craziness,
there's always the macro and then there's the micro.
So AOC tweeted to this morning, actually, what was it? No, yesterday. I think I was done prepping this and I saw this. I'm like, this bitch. She tweeted, "How are news outlets dedicating wall-to-wall coverage to campus protests, but not the discovery of mass graves in Gaza of people with their hands tied and clothing stripped? Why do we not know more? Where are the journalists and resources being dedicated to that story?" And I'm not sure if I added it. This bitch. I sent another tweet this morning responding to her, basically being like, "You're correct in calling this out, but you're not calling out Biden for demanding to push in terms of looking at."
Yeah. Collin? Internet workies?
People in mostly people liked it. I think this. What?
Internet went bad.
Oh no. Internet's going bad again. I'm not sure
you're
why
back.
this is happening. Okay.
I think. Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
So I tweeted this on Monday in response to Richie's tweet. While y'all are hyper-focused on Colombia, a mass grave has been discovered in Gaza during the weekend. The hyper-focus on Colombia is nothing more than a PR distraction. This is the most obvious proof that we are in the midst of a genocide. So I linked the Common Dreams article that I'm going to read in a bit. But I continued. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. And I said it earlier tonight. Palestinians will be demanding reparations for the ways they have suffered under the Israelis/the West. That fight is coming in the future, and watch how these Zionists will justify these actions to not give them shit. So let's actually get into this. So there's this tweet. Breaking: Palestinian civil defense has discovered hundreds of bodies buried by the IDF in a mass grave outside the Nasser hospital. At least 400 bodies have been found, with many being children with their hands bound behind their backs. This is a genocide. So if you play the clip, it's short. You're just going to see body bags, basically.
Okay.
So that's one set. Okay. So Olivia Roseanne writes in Common Dreams, obvious evidence of genocide, mass grave discovered in Gaza's Nasser hospital. Palestinian rescue workers say they found hundreds of bodies, some with their hands bound and others with their skin, organs, or heads removed.
Do we know if this is already counted in that 30,000 that we've heard so many times?
No, I think it's going to get to that.
Okay.
But I think even that number, 30,000, is
a long time ago.
She's going to talk about it. So yeah, and it's been stuck at 30,000 for months now.
Yeah.
But anyway, Palestinian civil defense discovered hundreds of bodies buried by Israeli forces in a mass grave inside the complex of Young Yunus Nasser Medical Complex on Saturday. Rescue workers said that they've removed at least 200 bodies as of 12 p.m. local time on Sunday, and they estimated that at least another 200 remain, Middle East Eye reported. We found corpses without heads, bodies without skins, and some had their organs stolen. The Director General of the government media officials said in a statement shared by Quds News Network. Following the mass graves at Al-Shifa Hospital, it looks like Israel is a vicarious death machine turning hospitals in Gaza into graves. The IDF withdrew from Khan Yunis on April 7th. While they occupied the city, they stormed the Nasser Medical Complex in February, arrested several doctors, damaging the structure with shelling, and rendering it unable to function as a hospital. Al Jazeera reporter Baroud said the bodies found in the Nasser grave included children, young men, and women. Rescuers said that the bodies they have found have been buried with their hands tied behind their backs, according to Middle East Eye. Our teams continue their search and retrieval operations for the remaining martyrs in the coming days, as there are still a significant number of them, Palestinian Emergency Services said in a statement shared with Al Jazeera. The news came as the U.S. House of Representatives voted on Saturday to send another $26 billion to Israel, including for military aid, which, as of today, passed through the Senate. I don't think Biden has signed the bill yet, but he's going to.
Yeah.
So that's another $26 billion out the door.
And TikTok banned.
And TikTok
snuck in there.
So these mass graves are obvious evidence of genocide and the most unthinkable war crimes. And yet, the House just signed off of $26 billion in weapons to fill the genocidal Israeli military, while Israel threatens a full-scale ground invasion to massacre Palestinians. The U.S. Palestinian rights said on social media. This is not the first mass grave that has been discovered near a Gaza Strip hospital since Israel began its devastating bombardment and invasion following the Hamas deadly October 7 attack on southern Israel. When the IDF withdrew from the Al-Shifa hospital earlier this month, Palestinian journalist Hossam Shabat reported seeing hundreds of dead bodies outside the hospital, many that had their hands and legs found and their bodies run over by bulldozers. Al Jazeera reported that several mass graves were found near Al-Shifa. Following the mass grave at Al-Shifa hospital, it looks like Israel is of a vicarious death machine turning hospitals in Gaza into graveyards. Wake up, world. Palestinian politician and activist Hanan Rashrahi wrote on social media. Mohammed Sherrada, the communications chief for Euromed Human Rights Monitor, expressed shock that there was not more media coverage of the Nasser grave. We also agree. So, can you zoom in, please? Because it's kind of hard to read that.
Yeah.
So, he tweeted, mass graves discovered at Nasser Hospital in Yan Kunis, containing hundreds of Gazians and patients massacred and covered up by Israel. Over 190 bodies found, 100 more expected. Again, I cannot find a single headline in any mainstream media about this. Imagine if this was Ukraine or Israel.
Yep.
So, actually, since then, you can play that. It's short, but you can play it.
Okay.
They're finding more bodies. So, actually, just as an update, I did see some mainstream media sources did report on this story a little bit. One that's kind of more intensive from CNN, which we'll get to later.
Yeah.
But if you go back to the article, over the weekend, the Gaza Health Ministry reported that the death toll from Israel's war on Gaza surpassed 34,000, though this is likely an undercount since several people remain trapped beneath rubble. And I would argue with these dead bodies, no telling how many are there, or, so I would argue it has to be at least 50,000, honestly, at this.
Yeah.
But so from Quds News Network, 2 mass graves were discovered by Palestinians near Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis following the withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces. We found the corpses without heads, bodies without skins, and some had their organs stolen. Reported the Director General of the Government Media Office in statement. Since the Israeli occupation withdrew, more than 180 bodies graves in the Nasser hospital area. The bodies include elderly women, children, and young men. Rescuers recounted witnessing bodies found in plastic bags with Hebrew writings on them. Many of the bodies had their hands tied behind their backs, indicating they were executed before being buried in these mass graves.
Okay.
So So this is now because I think I sent this to you on Saturday, I believe.
Yeah.
That's when I pinned this story to talk about for today. So as I said, mainstream media is starting to talk about this now. So from Reuters, written by Emma Farge, UN rights chief horrified by mass grave reports at Gaza hospitals. UN rights chief Volker Turk said on Tuesday that he was horrified by the destruction of the Nasser and Al-Shifa medical facilities in Gaza and reports of mass graves containing hundreds of bodies there, according to a spokesperson. Palestinian authorities reported finding hundreds of bodies in mass graves at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis this week after it was abandoned by Israeli troops. Bodies were also reported at the Al-Shifa site following an Israeli Special Forces operation. The Israeli military said claims by Palestinian authorities that the IDF had buried bodies were baseless and unfounded. It said forces searching for Israeli hostages had examined bodies previously buried by Palestinians near Nasser Hospital and had returned the bodies to where they were buried after they were examined. The examination was conducted in a careful manner and exclusively in places where intelligence indicated the possible presence of hostages. The examination was carried out respectfully while maintaining the dignity of the deceased, it said in a statement.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't call that respectfully, considering that heads were cut off.
Yeah.
And organs were stolen.
But Collin, clearly they were Hamas. Everyone was Hamas. You know? And they had to eradicate all of them. All of them were that. So.
Right.
Ugh.
Ravina Shamdasani, the spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, said the rights organization was raising the alarm because multiple bodies had been discovered. Turk said he had been horrified by the reported mass grave discoveries and the hospital's destruction, she said. Some of them had their hands tied, which of course indicates serious violations of international human rights law and international humanitarian law, and these need to be subjected to further investigations, Shamdasani said. She added that the UN Rights Office was working on collaborating Palestinian officials' reports, including one that 30 bodies were found at Al-Shifa. According to those reports, some of the bodies were buried beneath piles of waste and included women and older people. Hamas's Hamas-run Civil Emergency Service said on Tuesday a total of 310 bodies have been found at one mass grave at Nasser so far, and that 2 other graves have been identified but not yet excavated. The Palestinian Health Ministry repeated the figure. Turk, who is represented by Shamdasani at a UN press briefing, also decried Israeli strikes on Gaza in recent days, which said he had killed mostly women and children. He also repeated a warning against a full-scale incursion on Rafah, where some 1.2 million civilians are crowded together, saying this could lead to further atrocity crimes. So as I said, CNN actually did something and tried to report on this. So Christiane Amanpour did, I wouldn't say decent, but at least it was more, like not just a minute segment on this. So actually, let's take a look at what CNN is saying regarding all of this. So go ahead.
The State Department has raised concerns about the conflict in Gaza in its annual report on human rights. Antony Blinken called it, quote, deeply troubling and noted allegations of war crimes by both Israel and Hamas. This comes as a mass grave containing over 300 bodies has been uncovered at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. Correspondent Nada Bashir reports on the intense grief amongst the survivors, and of course, this story is difficult to watch.
For the last 10 days, this mother has returned to Gaza's Nasser hospital, searching desperately for the body of her 24-year-old daughter, Kauthar. She had been buried at this makeshift gravesite in January. Now, her body is missing. The Israelis turned the hospital upside down, she says. They dug up all the dead bodies and moved them around. These are the shrouded corpses of those retrieved from a newly discovered mass grave in Khan Yunis. More than 300 bodies have been recovered so far, according to Gaza's civil defense, but the search is still ongoing. This is a crime against humanity, Dr. Al-Maghaya says. How could the Israeli occupation forces dig up these graves and mishandle the bodies of our martyrs? In some cases, they even opened and removed the bodies from their bags, even though their names had been marked on them. Many of the bodies recovered here were buried by relatives or medics on the hospital's grounds in January as a temporary measure. Israel's relentless bombardment of the southern city making it too difficult to carry out a traditional burial. Following the IDF's withdrawal from Khan Yunis, families returned in the hope of finally laying their loved ones to rest, only to find that their bodies had been exhumed by the Israeli military, according to civil defense officials, and discarded in this nearby mass grave. I still haven't found my son Khalil's body, this father says. We had buried him over there, but we can't find him anymore. We just want to give him a dignified burial. According to Gaza's civil defense chief, some bodies have been discovered with their hands tied together. An indication, he says, that these may be the victims of alleged field executions. Though CNN is unable to verify such claims and cannot confirm the causes of death among the bodies being unearthed. But this would not be the first time graves have been disturbed by the Israeli military. The IDF previously acknowledging that its forces have exhumed graves in Gaza in order to carry out DNA tests to identify potential hostages. This man points to the palm tree beside which his brother, Ala, had been buried. 2 weeks on, and his body has still not been found. Under international humanitarian law, graves must, in times of war, be respected, properly maintained, and marked so they may always be found. But in Gaza, the Palestinian people have been robbed of their dignity, even in death.
Nada Bashir reporting then. The IDF says the claim that Israeli troops buried scores of Palestinian bodies in a mass grave is, quote, baseless and unfounded, saying bodies...
We got the footage. The footage is there. It's on camera.
She even caught me on camera.
Like, on camera. I mean, all they have is it wasn't me. They are taking the shaggy defense all the way to the bank. Okay. You know. Ugh. Oh. Next. There you go.
So, big saga.
Yes. Kirkland Brand. Yeah.
Yeah, he got spoken about this. So, of course, they did a pivot, dodge, obfuscate situation. But let's see how he did it.
Follow up on that. Now, it seems that more than 300 bodies have been found. The United Nations is asking or calling for an independent investigation. Would you support such an independent investigation?
Right now, Saeed, we are asking for more information.
Right.
That is squarely where we're leaving the conversation. Right. I don't have any details to match, confirm, or offer as it relates to that. We're aware of those reports, and we have asked the government of Israel for additional clarity and information, and that's
asked them.
That's
where I'm at.
I understand. If Secretary General Guterres asked for your support in this effort, would the United States support him?
You're asking about a hypothetical, Saeed, which again I'm not going to get ahead of until we have greater fidelity on information as to what this is, and we're hoping to get that from the government of Israel as soon as possible.
All right. Now,
what does that tell you, Care Bear? They don't do shit without talking to Daddy first.
Right. This is what $26 billion went to.
Yep.
$26 billion without any condition for the IOF to continue doing this shit. And they're going to continue, and especially that this invasion, that's what it is. This invasion in Rafah is supposed to happen at some point. You know, you just arm them. You know, you're basically trying to nuke the rest of the Palestinians that remain in Rafah. So, as I said earlier, Richie did, I know he did an extensive talk on this. And he actually brought up a good point here that I do want to highlight. So this is a shorter version of that stream that he did. I think it was a couple of days ago. So let's see what he says here.
If this had happened to the Israelis, they would scream nonstop about this. The two largest hospitals in Gaza, both of them with mass graves in their courtyards. Hundreds of bodies. People that have been discovered with their hands tied behind their backs, blindfolds. There are people with their limbs missing, with their heads missing. People with their organs cut out. These people have been executed. These are patients that we're talking about, dumped in a hole in the ground like as if they're trash. Can you imagine you're in a hospital bed and then you get dragged out in the courtyard and then you're shot in the head? But I hadn't told you it was Gaza. You might have thought I'm talking about the Holocaust. But this is not the Holocaust. This is Gaza. The Israelis are worse than Nazis. The Nazis, when they did these sorts of things, they were hiding it from the rest of the world. But doing it when the whole world is watching you, yeah, it's worse. It's definitely worse because it's a shameless act. And the Nazis did not say we are victims as they were carrying out genocide. The Israelis do. That's why they are worse. Anytime you open your mouth, oh, you're anti-Semitic. No, you are anti-Semitic. Netanyahu is from Eastern Europe. Gallant is from Eastern Europe. Benny Gantz is from Eastern Europe. These Israeli journalists I just showed you are from Eastern Europe. The Israeli ambassador to the UK is from Eastern Europe. These people are not Semites. They're Europeans. They have come to Palestine. They are killing Semites, 34,000 Semites. They have murdered them and dumped many of them in mass graves. Who is anti-Semitic? Who is the Nazi? I mean, how dare they? How dare they even show their faces in public? These people are sociopaths. They're out of their minds. They are a menace to society. They're a menace to world peace. They are the biggest criminals on the planet. The biggest criminals. It's like a crime scene left behind by Jack the Ripper, but we're talking about Israel. The West is supplying the weapons and the West is supplying the money. They know this is happening. Nevertheless, despite this, they give billions of dollars to the Israelis. This is the same week that the United States sends Israel $26 billion. I mean...
Yep.
Yeah. So he brought up something that I found very interesting. So if Hamas did this, you should want an independent investigation, especially if you have proof of it, right? So like, you know, like if you wanted to prove once and for all that Hamas was responsible for all of this, you know, like you would be screaming out the rafters and like, and this is what all these Zionists will probably be using. And it would be bigger news than what it is. But the fact that this has mostly gone under the radar, that says some shit to me. So that says that to me, and I'm going to say this as an opinion, but it really isn't. But, you know, I'm going to say allegedly, because I don't want this stream to be taken down, that Israel is responsible for that. And they're being very cagey about it. And the U.S. knows this, you know, but they're being very cagey about it because they don't want to indict Israel, again, especially since they just sent them more money for more weapons. Yeah. So, you know, so it's very much very telling that the fact that like, oh, this is baseless propaganda. And that's what I was getting online from this. Is like, oh, this is propaganda and all this kind of shit. You know, well, again, prove it. If Hamas was responsible, and especially if you have the proof, show us.
I mean, Israel's game plan has, to me, amounted to basically...
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
I mean, that's pretty much the way they're doing it. But Indy sent me this. I felt like it answered a lot of the, you know, talk to the thought you had at the beginning of this, which why is Colombia getting more press than this, you know?
Right.
So in context is going to tell us.
Shocking new accounts have emerged of mass graves of hundreds of Palestinians at the Nasser medical complex, killed by Israel following the withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces from Khan Yunis earlier this month. The shocking discovery follows previous reports of mass graves at Al-Shifa Hospital, Gaza City, following a 2-week siege. Palestinians on the ground say they've seen evidence that victims were bulldozed, beheaded, hands and legs bound, while some of those executed appear to have been bandaged and injured at the time they were killed. Sources say it's unclear if some of the human beings were even dead at the time they were buried.
But I will show you something. A dead body in front of me with bandages in the leg. he or she was injured when they killed him. The Israeli army killed him and buried him in a mass grave. Look there. He was injured. She was injured. And they killed him for hair.
In addition to countless other human rights violations and violations of international law, killing injured people in hospitals is a direct violation of the Geneva Convention. Mainstream media, however, has scarcely covered this story, instead focusing on the situation at a university as part of the coverage of Israeli students feeling upset about Israel being called an apartheid force. The news of mass graves comes just days after the United States announced plans for billions of dollars in further military aid for Israel. Western governments are not complicit in the crimes committed by Israel, but are directly responsible for them. The media's refusal to talk about the mass graves is preventing the governments they are supporting from answering questions about the funding, role and responsibility they play in Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people. The same talking point of Israel defending itself is being repeated, even in the face of yet more evidence of Israel murdering the defenseless, including the injured and children. Israel keeps talking about Israeli hostages, but every single Palestinian in Gaza is a hostage and is trapped in a prison with no defense against an occupying force, ethnically cleansing the land and which views all Palestinian life as a threat and target.
Yeah, I agree. It as I said earlier, this should be adding fuel to the fire. What's happening on these colleges campuses right now, but it's not, because this story has been suppressed, really, in mainstream media, and I almost would argue in independent media as well. Shout out to friend of the show, Nuno. He tweeted this earlier today, and I added it earlier this evening. Not sure what article he pulled this from, but he tweeted, U.S. won't back and participate in the probe against Israel for the mass graves they found in Khan Yunis, where anywhere from 300 to 700 bodies of executed Palestinians lie. The U.S. has been the biggest enemy of the Palestinian people throughout history, even more than Israel itself. Without the U.S., Israel is rubble. So he, I should have asked him where he got this from. So if you scroll down, Israel won't back UN call for probe into mass graves at Gaza hospitals. Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, nothing to see here,
So,
pretty much.
Yeah, nothing to see here. Let's not talk about it. We want to justify giving away this money with no conditions at all for Israel to do whatever they want. And it might go to aid. I got that today, that, this money is going to aid.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Okay, and how certain this aid is able to get to the people who need it.
Yeah, Gatorade for the IDF is the only aid they're probably sending, so,
Right.
But anyway. Oh, well,
but, yeah, very depressing, and definitely share this story. Hell, if you know anyone who's in college, especially if they're in encampments, share this with them.
Yeah.
Have them make this a talking point with their protests and all. So,
this is why we're demonetized. This is why you got to go to ko-fi.com/indie-news-network. Fill in the super chats or scan the QR code on your screen. Or if you're in the live chat, you can put !donate. You can also go to Rockfin and Rumble and support alternative platforms. Also just like and subscribe, very easy. Share the stream, like Collin said. Comment, all that's supposed to help us, get to more people. So
allegedly.
But yeah, do it up. You know what to do. All those things are lighting up anyway. What are you waiting on? Hurry! They're good. Hurry! God. All right. So before we get to this, Rockfin and Rumbles, we're gonna go check on that. So yeah, Rockfin is sent, and Rumble is sent, and cool. Let me go check those. I scroll. Dave Burt, seen him in Rockfin. He has no hesitation in saying the IDF are fascist monsters. Yeah. Anna Mayer saying F the IDF and the tanks we gave them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nice. Cool. Anything happening on the Rumbles? The true scale of horror and war crimes will likely never be fully known, says Google. Speaking of man-made horrors beyond our comprehension, do you heard of this, Care Bear? I know I talked about it a bit last week.
You talked a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it a little bit. Go ahead.
No, I kind of started reading the article that you were prepping last night, but
yeah.
But yeah, explain this.
So, Lavender AI is a targeting system that the Israelis created, right? We're going to get into how it was dreamt up, right? But Mint Press letting you know that an investigation published by 972 magazine reports that Israeli intelligence sources reveal the Israeli military used an AI system called Lavender and were given permission to kill thousands of civilians in pursuit of low-ranking Hamas members. Okay? That's where we start. So, Democracy Now! Has the author of this article. We're going to get to this article in a second, but I wanted him, they give a good intro for this, so I wanted to let him speak about it. Hold on. I gotta pause real quick. And then turn the sound on and full screen it. Cool.
Statistics, more than 50% of the casualties, more than 6,000 people at that time, came from a smaller group of families. It's an expression of, the family unit being destroyed. And I think that machine and the way it was used led to that.
Wait, that's not where it's supposed to start. Hold on. No. Play.
50% of the casualties.
Intelligence.
There we go.
This is Democracy Now!,
democracynow.org,
the War and Peace Report.
There.
I'm Amy Goodman. The Israeli publications, plus 972 magazine and Local Call, have exposed how the Israeli military used artificial intelligence, known as Lavender, to develop a kill list in Gaza that includes as many as 37,000 Palestinians who were targeted for assassination with little human oversight. The report is based in part on interviews with 6 Israeli intelligence officers who'd first-hand involvement with the AI system. 972 reports, quote, Lavender has played a central role in the unprecedented bombing of Palestinians, especially during the early stages of the war. In fact, according to the sources, its influence on the military's operations was such that they essentially treated the outputs of the AI machine as if it were a human decision. A second AI system, known as Where's Daddy, tracked Palestinian men on the kill list. It was purposely designed to help Israel target individuals when they were at home at night with their families. One intelligence officer told the publications, quote, we were not interested in killing operatives only when they were in a military building or engaged in a military activity. On the contrary, the IDF bombed them in homes without hesitation as a first option. It's much easier to bomb a family's home. The system is built to look for them in these situations, they said. Today, we spend the hour with the Israeli investigative journalist Yuval Abraham, who broke the story for 972 and Local Call. It's headlined Lavender, the AI machine directing Israel's bombing spree in Gaza. I spoke with Yuval Abraham yesterday and began by asking him to lay out what he found.
Yeah, thank you for having me again, Amy. It is a very long piece. It's 8,000 words. And we divided it into 6 different steps. And each step represents a process in the highly automated way in which the military marked targets since October. And the first finding is Lavender. So Lavender was designed by the military. Its purpose was, when it was being designed, to mark the low-ranking operatives in the Hamas and Islamic Jihad military wings. That was the intention, because Israel estimates that there are between 30 to 40,000 Hamas operatives, and it's a very, very large number. And they understood that the only way for them to mark these people is by relying on artificial intelligence, and that was the intention. Now, what sources told me is that after October 7th, the military basically made a decision that all of these tens of thousands of people are now people that could potentially be bombed inside their houses, meaning not only killing them, but everybody who was in the building, the children, the families. And they understood that in order to try to attempt to do that, they are going to have to rely on this AI machine called Lavender with very minimal human supervision. I mean, one source said that he felt he was acting as a rubber stamp on the machine's decisions. Now, what Lavender does is it scans information on probably 90% of the population of Gaza. So we're talking about, more than 1 million people. And it gives each individual a rating between 1 to 100. A rating that is an expression of the likelihood that the machine thinks, based on a list of small features, and we can get to that later, that that individual is a member of the Hamas or Islamic Jihad military wings. Sources told me that the military knew, because they took a random sampling and checked one by one, the military knew that approximately 10% of the people that the machine was marking to be killed were not Hamas militants. Some of them had a loose connection to Hamas, others had completely no connection to Hamas. I mean, one source said how the machine would bring people who had the exact same name and nickname as a Hamas operative, or people who had similar communication profiles, like it could be civil defense workers, police officers in Gaza. And they implemented, again, minimal supervision on the machine. One source said that he spent 20 seconds per target before authorizing the bombing of the alleged low-ranking Hamas militant. Often it was also a civilian, killing those people inside their houses. And I think the reliance on artificial intelligence here to mark those targets, and basically the deadly way in which the officers spoke about how they were using the machine could very well be part of the reason why in the first 6 weeks after October 7th, like one of the main characteristics of the policies that were in place were entire Palestinian families being wiped out inside their houses. I mean, if you look at UN statistics, more than 50% of the casualties, more than 6,000 people at that time, came from a smaller group of families. It's an expression of the family unit being destroyed. And I think that machine and the way it was used led to that.
So, any questions before we get started?
So basically, this is... I keep going back to those drones.
Yeah. Yep. It's in some ways worse than that, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's like a person doesn't even have to necessarily, from what I understand, a person doesn't necessarily have to control it. The AI does it on its own.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, they rubber stamped the Air Force using their own, this is just targeting, right? So, but we're going to get into it. So I brought this article. Again, he said it was 8,000 words. I linked it down in the description. We're not going to go through quite all of it. But I tried to pull the important parts for people. So we're going to go a bit more in depth. So in 2021, a book titled The Human Machine Team: How to Create Synergy Between Human and Artificial Intelligence That Will Revolutionize Our World was released in English under the pen name Brigadier General Y.S. In it, the author, a man who we confirmed to be the current commander of the elite Israeli intelligence unit 8200, makes the case for designing a special machine that could rapidly process massive amounts of data to generate thousands of potential targets for military strikes in the heat of war. Such technology, he writes, would resolve what he described as a human bottleneck for both locating the new targets and decision-making to approve the targets. Such a machine, it turns out, actually exists. So that machine's called Lavender, which is a nice flowery name for it. But it's just essentially humans couldn't kill fast enough for them. So we got to make robots to target them. So the result, as the sources testified, is that thousands of Palestinians, most of them women and children, are people who were not involved in the fighting or wiped out by Israeli airstrikes, especially during the first week of the war, because of the AI program's decisions. We were not interested in killing Hamas operatives only when they were in a military building or engaged in a military activity, an intelligence officer told 972. On the contrary, the IDF bombed them in homes without hesitation as a first option. It's much easier to bomb a family's home. The system is built to look for them in these situations. The Lavender machine joins another AI system, the Gospel, about which information was revealed in a previous investigation by 972 and local call.
Literally, oh my God.
Yes. In November, as well as the Israeli military's own publication, a fundamental difference between the two systems is the definition of the target. Whereas the Gospel marks buildings and structures that the army claims militants operate from, Lavender marks people and puts them on a kill list. Yay! Isn't it? Don't you love learning about man-made horrors? It's great. It's just the best. So, in addition, according to the source, when it came to targeting alleged junior militants, what do you think that means? Junior militants.
Child soldiers.
Yes. Marked by Lavender, the army preferred to only use unguided missiles, commonly known as dumb bombs, in contrast to smart precision bombs, which can destroy entire buildings on top of their occupants and cause significant casualties. Well, you don't want to waste expensive bombs on unimportant people.
Kids.
It's very expensive for the country, and there's a shortage of those bombs. Said C, one of the intelligence officers, or said that they had personally authorized the bombing of hundreds of private homes and alleged junior officers marked by Lavender, with many of these attacks killing civilians and entire families as collateral damage.
So this just kind of confirms that they just consider everyone Hamas.
Well, we're gonna
junior operatives.
Oh, they have a formula. It's not even. So, in an unprecedented move, according to two of the sources, the army also decided during the first week of the war, for every junior Hamas operative that Lavender marked, it was permissible to kill up to 15 to 20 civilians. In the past, the military did not authorize any collateral damage. During assassinations of low-ranking militants, the sources added that in the event that the target was a senior Hamas official with the rank of battalion or brigade commander, the army on several occasions authorized the killing of more than 100 civilians in the assassination of a single commander. I mean, I feel like they're just telling on themselves here.
Yes.
Which they literally are. The sources said that the approval to automatically adopt Lavender's kill list, which was granted about 2 weeks into the war, after intelligence personnel manually checked the accuracy of random sample of several hundred targets selected by the AI system, when that sample found that Lavender's results had reached 90% accuracy. Okay, so this is in a 2-week span, right? They alleged that this had 90% accuracy, right? In identifying an individual's affiliation with Hamas. The army authorized the sweeping use of the system. From that moment, sources said that if Lavender decided an individual was a militant in Hamas, they were essentially asked to treat that as an order, with no requirement to independently check why the machine made that choice, or to examine the raw intelligence data on which it's based. At 5 a.m., the Air Force would come and bomb all the houses that we marked, he said. We took out thousands of people. We didn't go through them one by one. We put everything into automated systems, and as soon as one of the marked individuals was at home, he immediately became a target. We bombed him and his house. It was very surprising for me that we were asked to bomb a house to kill a ground soldier whose importance in the fighting was so low, said one source. About the use of AI to mark alleged low-ranking militants, I nicknamed those targets garbage targets. Still, I found them more ethical than the targets that we bombed just for deterrence. High-rises that are evacuated and toppled just to cause destruction. The deadly results of this loosening of restrictions in the early stage of the war was staggering. According to data from the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza, on which the Israeli army had relied almost exclusively since the beginning of the war, Israel killed some 15,000 Palestinians, almost half of the death toll so far, in the first 6 weeks of the war, up until a week-long ceasefire was agreed on November 24th. The Lavender software analyzes information collected on most of the 2.3 million residents of the Gaza Strip through a system of mass surveillance, then assesses and ranks the likelihood that each particular person is active in the military wing of Hamas or PIJ. According to sources, the machine gives almost every single person in Gaza a rating from 1 to 100, expressing how likely it is that they are a militant. Lavender learns to identify characteristics of known Hamas and PIJ operatives whose information was fed to the machine as training data, and then to locate these same characteristics, also called features, among the general population. Sources explained an individual found to have several different incriminating features will reach a high rating and thus automatically becomes a potential target for assassination. In the Human Machine Team, the book referenced at the beginning of this article, the current commander of Unit 8200 advocates for such a system without referencing Lavender by name. The commander himself also isn't named, but 5 sources in 8200 confirm the commander is the author, as reported also by Haaretz, describing human personnel as a bottleneck that limits the Army's capacity during a military operation. We humans cannot process so much information. It doesn't matter how many people you have tasked to produce targets during the war, you still cannot produce enough targets per day. The book isn't the only time a senior Israeli commander hinted at the existence of human targeted machines like Lavender. 972 and Local Call have obtained footage of a private lecture given by the commander of Unit 8200's Secret Data Science and AI Center, Colonel Yov, at Tel Aviv University AI Week in 2023, which was reported on at the time in the Israeli media. In the lecture, the commander speaks about a new, sophisticated target machine used by the Israeli army that detects dangerous people based on their likeness to existing lists of known militants on which it was trained. Using the system, we managed to identify Hamas missile squad commanders, Colonel Yoav said in the lecture, referring to Israel's May 2021 military operation in Gaza when the machine was used for the first time. So, the lecture contains illustrations of how the machine works. It's fed data, right? Learns to notice their features, and then it rates other Palestinians based on how similar they are to the militants. We rank the results and determine the threshold at which to attack a target. Yov said in the lecture, emphasizing that eventually people of flesh and blood take the decisions. In the defense realm, ethically speaking, we put a lot of emphasis on this. These tools are meant to help intelligence officers break their barriers. In practice, however, sources who have used Lavender in recent months say human agency and precision were substituted by mass target creation and lethality. So, senior officer who used Lavender echoed to 972 and Local Call that in the current war, officers were not required to independently review the AI system assessment. In order to save time, enable the mass production of human targets without hindrances, everything was statistical. Everything was neat. It was very, very dry. B said he noted that this lack of supervision was permitted despite internal checks showing that Lavender's calculations were considered accurate only 90% of the time. In other words, it was known in advance that 10% of the human targets slated for assassination were not members of Hamas. Right? So, for example, sources explain that Lavender machines sometimes mistakenly flagged individuals who had communications patterns similar to Hamas, including police and civil defense workers, militants' relatives, residents who happen to have a name and nickname identical to that of operative, and Gazans who used a device that once belonged to a Hamas operative. So you pick up a cell phone on the ground, you could then be bombed, is what that sounds like. So, so similar problems exist with the ability of target machines to assess the phone used by an individual marked for assassination. In war, Palestinians change phones all the time, said the source. People lose contact with their families, give their phone to a friend or wife, maybe lose it. There's no way to rely 100% on the automatic mechanism that determines which phone number belongs to whom. According to the sources, the Army knew that the minimal human supervision in place would not discover these faults. There was no zero-error policy. Mistakes were treated statistically, said a source who used Lavender. Because of the scope and magnitude, the protocol was that even if you don't know for sure that the machine is right, you you know that statistically it's fine, so you go for it. In a statement to 972, the IDF spokesman claimed in response to this article that Hamas places its operatives and military assets in the heart of civilian population. Isn't that nice? The 6 sources we spoke to echoed this to some degree, saying that Hamas' extensive tunnel system deliberately passes under hospitals and schools. So this is their excuse for using this, right? So, yeah, the sources argue that many Israeli strikes kill civilians as a result of these tactics by Hamas, a characterization that human rights groups warns evades Israel's onus for inflicting the casualties. So, in contrast to the Israeli army's official statements, the sources explained that a major reason for the unprecedented death toll from Israel's current bombardment is the fact that the army has systematically attacked targets in their private homes alongside their families, in part because it was easier from an intelligence standpoint to mark family houses using automated systems. Indeed, several sources emphasize that, as opposed to numerous cases of Hamas operatives engaging in military activity from civilian errors, in the case of systemic assassination strikes, the army routinely made the active choice to bomb suspected militants when inside a civilian household from which no military activity took place. This choice, they said, was a reflection of the way Israel's system of mass surveillance in Gaza is designed. So,
which is bullshit.
Yeah. So we're going to get into Where's Daddy now. I think this is one of the things I brought up.
Yeah,
right?
Mentioned, yeah.
So, in order to identify the moment operatives entered their houses in real time, various additional automatic softwares have been developed. These programs track thousands of individuals simultaneously, identify when they are at home, and send an automatic alert to the targeting officer, who then marks the house for bombing. One of several of these tracking softwares revealed here for the first time is called Where's Daddy? You put hundreds of targets into the system and wait to see who you can kill, said one source with knowledge of the system. It's called broad hunting. You copy-paste from the list that the target system produces. So, Caitlin Johnston, one of our favorites, wanted to make sure that we understood some of this, right? So one aspect of the recent revelations about the IDF's Lavender system that's not getting enough consideration is the fact that it is completely devastating to the narrative that Israel has been killing so many civilians because Hamas uses human shields. If you missed this story, a major report from 972 revealed that Israel has been using an AI system called Lavender, right, to kill lists of suspected members of Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which have been carried out with hardly any human verification. One automated system, psychopathically named Where's Daddy, tracks suspects to their homes so that they could be killed with their entire families. The IDF has been knowingly killing 15 to 20 civilians at a time to kill one Hamas operative, and up to 100 civilians at a time to take out a senior official, right? The human shields narrative that's become so popular in Israel apologia insists that the reason the IDF kills so many civilians in its attack on Gaza is because Hamas intentionally surrounds itself with non-combatants as a strategy to make the innocent Israelis reluctant to drop bombs on them. But as The Intercept's Ryan Grimm recently observed on Twitter, and she mentions Abby Martin too, we covered Robert Inkelesh covering that, I do believe, right? The human shields narrative. This is soundly refuted by the revelation that Israel has been intentionally waiting to target suspected Hamas members when it knows they're surrounded by civilians. So, Israel's argument that kills so many civilians because Hamas uses human shields is torn apart by the revelation that the IDF prefers to attack its targets when they are home with their families. Tweeted Grimm, it's not Hamas using human shields, it is Israel deliberately hunting families.
Right.
A human shield is... Yeah.
Yeah, so basically it's the idea of like, if we take down a Hamas operative and they're with their families, and God forbid if there are other people around them, so be it.
Yep. So a human shield is only a shield if your enemy values human life and seeks to minimize civilian death. Israel deliberately maximizes the number of civilians it can kill by waiting until a target is with his entire family. Palestinians are not shields to Israel. They are all targets. This is such an important point Advocates for Palestine like Abby Martin have for years been presenting compelling arguments against Israel's human shields claims, and common sense shows that the presence of civilians is clearly not a deterrent to Israeli airstrikes. Because of these 972 revelations, the lie has now been thoroughly, irrefutably debunked. Civilians aren't getting killed because Hamas hides behind them. Civilians are getting killed because the IDF waits until suspected Hamas members are on civilians to target them with high-powered military explosives. So, yeah. She mentions the Prime Minister Golda Meir quote, "Someday we may be able to forgive the Arabs for killing our children, but we will never forgive them for making us kill their children." Right? Which is just
Pause.
the worst quote.
Are you going? What? Yeah. Are you going to forgive the Germans for killing yours?
No. You know. So Caitlin writes, "You see this quote pop up all the time in varying iterations, shared approvingly by Israel apologists around the world as though it's something wise and brilliant instead of a horrific defense of murdering children, but it turns out this morally depraved quote isn't even true by the most generous of interpretations. Israel isn't being forced to kill Palestinian children, it is knowingly choosing to. The human shields narrative is just one more instance in which Israel pretends to be the victim while actually being the victimizer. They lied about beheaded babies so they could get away with murdering babies. They lied about mass rape so that they could get away with committing rape. They lied about Hamas using civilians as human shields so that they could kill civilians.
So they can kill them.
Yep, the lie about being victims so that they can victimize."
Right.
So, I have a little bit more, and then we'll finish up with Richie. So, evidence of this policy is also clear from the data. During the first month of war, half of the fatalities, 6,000 people or so, belonged to 1,000 families, many of which were completely wiped out while inside their homes, according to UN figures. The proportion of entire families bombed in their homes in the current war is much higher than in the 2014 Israeli operation in Gaza. Oh, that's funny, before October 7th, interesting. Which is previously Israel's deadliest war on the Strip, further suggesting the prominence of this policy. Another source said that each time the pace of assassinations waned, more targets were added to systems like Where's Daddy to locate individuals that entered their homes and could therefore be bombed. He said that the decision of who to put into the tracking system could be made by relatively low-ranking officers in the military hierarchy. One day, totality of my own accord, I adding something like 1,000 new targets to the tracking system because the number of attacks we were conducting decreased, the source said. That made sense to me. In retrospect, it seems like a serious decision I made, and such decisions were not made at high levels. The sources said in the first 2 weeks of the war, several thousand targets were initially inputted into locating programs like Where's Daddy that included all the members of Hamas's elite special forces unit, the Nukba, all of Hamas's anti-tank operatives, and anyone who entered Israel on October 7th. But before long, the kill list was drastically expanded. In the end, it was everyone, marked by Lavender, one source explained, tens of thousands. This happened a few weeks later when the Israeli brigade entered Gaza, and there were already fewer uninvolved people, i.e. civilians in the northern area. According to this source, even some minors were marked by Lavender as targets for bombing. Normally, operatives are over the age of 17, but that was not a condition. One source said that when attacking junior operatives, including those marked by AI systems like Lavender, the number of civilians they were allowed to kill alongside each target was fixed during the initial weeks of the war, up to 20. Another source claimed the fixed number was up to 15. These collateral damage degrees, as the military calls them, were applied broadly to all suspected junior militants, the sources said, regardless of their rank, military importance, and age, but no specific case-by-case examination to weigh. So, according to A, who was an officer in a target operation room in the current war, the Army's International Law Department has never before given such sweeping approval for such a high collateral damage degree. It's not just that you can kill any person who is a Hamas soldier, which is clearly permitted and legitimate in terms of international law, but they directly tell you you are allowed to kill them along with many civilians. Every person who wore a Hamas uniform in the past year or two could be bombed with 20 civilians as collateral damage, even without special permission. A continued, in practice, the principle of proportionality did not exist. So Amjad al-Sheikh, a young Palestinian from Gaza, said many of these family members were killed in that bombing. A resident of Shujaiya, east of Gaza City, he was at a local supermarket that day when he heard 5 blasts that shattered glass windows. I ran to my family's house, but there was no building there anymore. Al-Sheikh told 972, the street was filled with screams and smoke, entire resident blocks. Where'd I go? This way, sorry. Al-Sheikh told 972, the street was filled with screams and smoke, entire residence blocks turned to mountains of rubble and deep pits. People began to search in the cement using their hands, and so did I, looking for signs of my family home. Al-Sheikh's wife and baby daughter survived, protected from the rubble by a closet that fell on top of them. But he found 11 other members of his family among them, his sisters, brothers, their young children, dead under the rubble. According to the human rights group B'Tselem, the bombing that day destroyed dozens of buildings, killed dozens of people, and buried hundreds under the ruin of their homes. The sources who spoke to 972 explained that there was sometimes a substantial gap between the moment the tracking systems, like Where's Daddy, alerted an officer that a target had entered their house, and the bombing itself, leading to the killing of whole families, even without hitting the army's target. It happened to me many times that we attacked a house, but the person wasn't even home, one source said. The result is that he killed a family for no reason. Sometimes the target was at home earlier, and then at night he went to sleep somewhere else, say underground, and you didn't know about it, one of the sources said. There are times when you double-check the location, and there are times when you just say, okay, he was in the house in the last few hours, so you can just bomb. Another source described a similar incident that affected him and made him want to be interviewed for this investigation. We understood that the target was home at 8 p.m. In the end, the Air Force bombed the house at 3 a.m. Then we found in the span of that time he had managed to move himself to another house with his family. There were 2 other families with children in the building we bombed. So, anything to say before I let Richie close us out?
I mean, I think, again, I keep thinking of those damn drones.
I know.
But it's just the idea of, like, thank you for putting that in my head.
Yeah.
But, so basically, it just sounds like, to me, I think it just became to a point where it's just indiscriminate in terms of, I could plug it, well, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just so I can understand it. So, like, a lower level IDF soldier can plug in, I want to target you, for example, and, like, maybe because you looked at me the wrong way or what.
Right.
And then...
Yeah, all you got to do is connect it to another lower level Hamas militant in some way or fashion, you know, and you'd be fine to add that, and then that target, and then you would turn into a Hamas militant, you know, like, and they would just kill your family.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I mean, that was like from 8 a.m. and then they went out at 3 a.m. Like, that's a big gap. 8 and 3, you know. So 8 p.m. to 3 a.m., whatever it was. But, yep, Richie's got some closing thoughts as well. You know, he covered this. I'm only going to play a little bit of it, and then we'll head out of here. So let's see what Richie has to say.
With Pegasus, and yeah, Pegasus is real, no question about that. But the Israelis have cultivated an image about themselves which serves them. It demoralizes people. They can sell cyber weapons, etc. Right? So you shouldn't buy into it too much. And where's the proof that they're not as hot shit as they say they are? October 7th.
That's the end. Why is it doing that? It's like not getting my start times. Hold on.
You know, let me. This is a very, very long article, and I sat down the whole day going through it, adding notes, and I've just given you the gist of it. There's no need for me to go any further, but I'll just add a few last points. The Israelis have always behaved like this. This is their policy. They were brutal in 48. They were brutal even before that, right? And they were brutal in 56, and then also in 67 and in 72. They've always been brutal 24/7. And so they have turned a machine into they basically made this AI just as brutal as them and automated the process. That's it. One other point that I would add is that this could be a psyop. What do I mean by a psyop? A psyop is an abbreviation. It basically means a psychological operation that it's meant to demoralize the other side, right? So this could be the Israelis feeding the journalists a bunch of rubbish. I don't think so, but we're contemplating. This could be the Israelis feeding the journalists a bunch of rubbish about Lavender so that they make Hamas feel demoralized. Like, oh crap, they're going to kill us with our families. They're going to target us, this machine, this robot killer. It could be. But I'll also add another point. The Israelis always love to pretend that they're hot shit, with technological and electronic in the tech and electronic domains. What do I mean by this? For example, when they killed a nuclear scientist in Iran, they then told the New York Times how they smuggled a gun into Iran, and then it was an automated gun that killed him. I mean, who the hell knows if that's true? We don't know if that's true. Also, this thing with how they know how to hack everyone with Pegasus, and yeah, Pegasus is real, no question about that. But the Israelis have cultivated an image about themselves which serves them. It demoralizes people. They can sell cyber weapons, etc. Right? So you shouldn't buy into it too much. And where's the proof that they're not as hot shit as they say they are? October 7th.
Well, anything to say? I mean, I think we covered it.
I mean, again, I felt like you primed me for this.
Yep.
For other segments before, but but my question is, who created this technology? That like, is it Israel? Is it the US? Is it because honestly, I can't imagine the US just being doing this on their own. So
no, I mean, we probably have our own.
That's what I'm wondering. Is who
place,
created this tech?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of clearly Israel wants to claim it as their own, probably so that they can sell it. But I imagine they had some help if it is real and if it has the capabilities they're saying it does. But yeah, I don't know. But I'm sure if we weren't demonetized already, YouTube would definitely do it for talking about it. You can go to kodashv.com/Indie News Network to get around that system, or scan the QR code on your screen. If you're tired of the YouTube system, you can go to Rockfin and Rumble, link in the description below, and support us on other platforms. But you can always just like and subscribe. Sharing also helps a ton. Leaving a comment supposedly helps. Help us get to 2K subs. We're getting there. We're like 1.9 something now, right? I do believe.
1906.
Hey,
yeah,
I'll take it. 100 more subs to 2K. Cool. So indienews.shop. That's that merch store. You want to get one of those, Resistance is justified shirts right there. You can go pick one of those up and use code Jesse.
Get it for your college. Get it for your college folks, so they can wear that sport anywhere here. So.
Yeah, and just eat that watermelon hoodie. Look at that. Isn't that cool? I like that. All right. Well, that's our show, Care Bear.
Indy, help us out. What we have upcoming for the week.
Haven't heard from Tara this week yet for something. So rules that out.
Have you heard from Fab regarding politically homeless?
I've heard Snow and Himbo are trying to make that more consistent. So keep an eye out for that. I've not heard specifically this week. I'm sure Indy will be telling us in the chat here shortly. But I just had to scroll down. People be talking lots.
Indy's should I just come in? No, not for the last
Yes, politically homeless tomorrow.
Okay. Tara, I'm not
So,
sure about.
yeah.
Angel in the afternoon at 7. Friday night. Jesse Clip Show Friday night, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. Saturday is Angel's Wrestling Show at 8. Himbo's streaming, game streaming show at 11:30. I think I got the rest of it in the How Do We Miss That on Sunday at 10:30. Jesse will be on for American Tradition at 9 on Tuesday. And then we'll be back next week, next Wednesday, and it'll be, I guess it'll be my birthday stream because the following day is my birthday.
Okay.
So, and then
You'll have to remind me of that about 1,000 times. Cool.
So, wait, Indy, wrong, 10. What did I say? Did I say 10:30 or 10?
Angel at 8, Himbo at 11:30. How Do We Miss That's at 10. On Sundays. Boats is anywhere from 11:30 to 12, depending on how long Indy wants to talk for. So keep an eye on that. But yeah, I think that's it. So
yeah.
You want to say to the people before we get off here and eat snackies?
Indy said I said 10:30, so no, I meant to say 10. So sorry. 10 for How We Miss 10 on Sunday, 10 Eastern for How We Missed That, and 10 Eastern for American Tradition on Tuesday.
Cool.
So,
well, hopefully people like the show. It's always useful, and as always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.